check.
watch this
You're
25
talking
minutes to 7 and I'm
about
still
20 beds, you're talking $500,000. We
good.
don't have it in the budget. We
Did you hear
don't have any money.
in one of these other counties, they've already spent $350,000.
Oh, yeah, and they're going on about $1 million, or $250,000. We don't have the money. We're already $1 million short for next year.
It's not like this is the main source.
Well,
of it.
listen, it's,
Like this morning, you
the
know,
judges
just thought
can
I'd had my
declare them
stuff done.
overcrowded, or, you know, the sheriff can declare an overcrowding, and the judges gotta come in and let so many go, that are like 10 days left, or 2 weeks
Yeah,
left.
they look at the various cases.
They just go, and you back down it, you just back it down.
So you talked to me about it?
And there's a wave on it, you know, between the season, you know. You know, summer we're usually more busier. But, now, it's gonna be a constant overcrowding, then let's build another 50 beds. Design already for an additional 50 beds in the parking lot.
Let's build the 300 beds and be done with it.
Yeah.
That's what the Blue Ribbon Committee told you 5 years ago, was you needed 300
I
beds.
don't think it was quite 300, was it?
After looking at it from 15 different directions, you needed 300 beds.
And we still do, and we always will.
Yep.
So it's,
In the new building, they're so much more efficient.
Well, either you
I
do,
don't think
either
we
you
can
do a new.
talk about this before the meeting,
Yeah, I know, right.
folks.
Well, I'm not gonna dump $500,000 into beds.
Chris is nodding over there.
I'm not gonna do it.
As long as I get a room in there, you know, I'm old.
And keep a spot for me.
That's a different home.
Old people can talk about whatever they can remember.
For naughty doctors.
So did you rent it?
Is Herb coming tonight?
Right here.
No, he's not back in town yet.
Alrighty, Herb.
I don't think he's here next week.
Did you take a ride today?
Hey, we're still,
Only here.
Herb's still out.
I might go home tonight. Night rider.
we're still in luck, huh?
Here's my leather
Guaranteed
jacket.
to knock you lower off the
Way home
base.
will be cold.
I don't know. Wait till you hear what I got to
I
say.
got an idea anyway, in case you
But what I got to say matters a great
I
deal.
just hope they don't take too
I wear
long.
boots, I wear gloves.
On the other stuff,
That's an open check for all those counties. They let them.
time, son, let's go.
And, you know, you outboard 40 or 50 prisoners, you got $250,000 on the table.
Make the report.
The sooner we start, the sooner we can get going.
I got 2 more to sign here and then I'll move on.
Is this coming out of your budget,
Because I
Judge?
gotta get my pen out.
Behave.
We're already $1 million in the hole. We don't have a lot.
Actually, the sheriff
Wait,
is right after his. You're in good company.
We are gonna clean it up.
I have a few issues with him, Judge.
Good evening, everyone. 1 minute. You ready? You ready, Bill? Jimmy? Or Mike?
Michael.
Michael's in there. Okay, we'll call the regular meeting of the Grand Traverse County Ways and Means Committee to order. First thing, I will make note that this meeting was postponed from last week so as to make it available for the auditors to make their presentation. Our agenda, other than them, was reasonably short, so they were not available last week, so we postponed it for the week so we could do it this week. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Sarah, will you call a roll, please?
Inman.
Here.
Lathrop.
Here.
Lemcool. Max Bauer.
Here.
Rennie.
Here?
Thomas.
Yep.
Wheelock.
Yes, ma'am. And Commissioner Lemkool is still at the Boy Scout National Jamboree, so
Oh, that's right.
he is excused. The next order of business would be the approval of the minutes of the June 19th Ways and Means meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the May 15th, 2013.
Motion by Inman, supported by Lathrop. Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. First opportunity for public comment. Sarah, will you read the rules, please?
Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the Board of Commissioners which is required to be open to the public under the provision of the Michigan's Open Meetings Act. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. Any person wishing to address the board shall state his or her name and address. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioners' questions, if any. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. The chairperson may, at his or her discretion, extend the amount of time any person is allowed to speak. Public comment will be solicited during the 2 public comment periods noted in Rule 5.4, Order of Business. However, public comment will generally be received at any time during the meeting regarding a specific topic currently under discussion by the board. Members of the public wishing to comment should raise their hand or pass a note to the clerk in order to be recognized and shall not address the board until called upon by the chairperson.
Having heard the rules for public comment, is there anyone wishing to make comment at this time? Bob?
Good evening, Commissioners. Bob Cooney, 7247 Henderson Drive in Traverse City, and Grand Traverse County Prosecuting Attorney. I'm here tonight because I want to express, I guess, general support for the Sheriff's proposal to keep open the possibility of boarding out prisoners. I don't believe that he's asking for any specific sum. What I think he's asking for is that you make that a possibility. And I don't know all of the details of what he's going to be asking you for tonight, but what I want to say is that I've spent a lot of time looking back to the study that was done by this board back in 2003 and the recommendations of and the minutes from the meetings of the Blue Ribbon Committee that studied prisoner overcrowding or jail overcrowding at that time. And I think it's important to keep in perspective that back at that time the county was spending substantial sums of money to board prisoners out. We had an obvious prisoner overcrowding problem. There were several releases of inmates under the Emergency Overcrowding Act. And that's where we were back in 2003 and 2004 when we had 155 beds in our jail. Because of that, this board adopted what was titled a short-term solution to the problem, and that was to add 44 beds to our jail. Unfortunately, because of realities about the operational costs of Section 500, commonly referred to as our work release building, the reality is that we've added 13 beds, as I understand it. And I was just talking to Captain Hall that even those 13 beds, 6 of them he generally cannot use because of regulations. And so even though I've been here since 1993, almost 20 years, and the population of this county has increased 25,000, we've seen a dramatic increase in the number of seasonal population and tourists. And even though we've seen that, we've added, by my count, about 13 beds to our jail. And it's unsatisfactory, at least according to the Blue Ribbon Commission and the study that was done back in 2003 and 2004. And I would ask that all of you, some of you obviously were around at that time, but I'd ask that all of you go back and take a look at that study and look at the minutes of the Blue Ribbon Committee and try to understand what was going on at that time and why the sheriff is in front of you tonight asking that you spend money to board prisoners out. A couple of things I'd like to note about the study is that it indicated that by 2013, where we're at today, that we would need 217 beds in our jail. And by 2025, it predicted that we would need 250 beds. And that was if the county adopted all of the recommendations of the person who conducted the study, including increased number of delayed or deferred sentences, increase in our community corrections program, and we've done, by my assessment, all of the things other than maybe forming a criminal justice committee that were all of the things that were recommended by that study. Our office is very much involved in and committed to the sobriety court program, for example. Just a couple of years ago, we weren't accepting drunk driving third offenders into the program. Now we regularly consider all drunk driving third offenders for that program. It used to be that someone who committed a drunk driving third offense was doing a year in jail. Nowadays, they have the opportunity of not spending any time in jail other than the night that they were arrested. And if you consider we've taken those people out of the equation, generally with all first offenders, they're given some opportunity to have a deferred or a delayed sentence without the opportunity of jail time. We've eliminated check cases. We've really done everything I think we can. And I'm always willing to consider other solutions, other possibilities than jail. And I'm willing to work with whoever wants to make suggestions for our office. But I really think that we've carried out those recommendations, and we're still at a point where this year the judges have reduced sentences several weeks in a row in misdemeanor cases, and so we're starting to see what was predicted back in 2003 and 2004 as being a significant problem. What I really want to stress is that this is a quality of life issue. This has to do with whether people feel safe when they walk around downtown Traverse City, when they go to bed at night, whether they feel safe knowing that their car or their home or their business is not going to get broken into. You don't have to go very far to find towns that have neglected law enforcement and see the results of boarded up storefronts, citizens who are not engaged in the community because of public safety issues. Now, I'm committed to public safety. I'm committed to keeping this community safe, and I hope that you are too. And I'm not saying that there's a crisis right now. I'm not saying that we necessarily need to go out and spend a lot of money boarding inmates out. But if you take away that possibility of jail time, if you hamstring the judges so they cannot give an appropriate sentence, if you give me nothing but blanks to shoot, no matter how much I charge, you've taken away part of that, the ability to effectively combat criminal activity. So, again, I don't know the details of the sheriff's proposal. I think it's important that we all understand the historical perspective here. I think it's important that this board seriously consider the sheriff's proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Is there anyone else wishing to make comment at this time? Chaz, you want to do yours now or later?
We're going to do it on the second.
Okay.
See what goes on here.
Okay.
Judge
Your Honor?
Peters standing up.
You're fine. You can do it now, or we can do it when we're discussing the issue.
All right. Just a moment, I'll
I served on that, I can't remember if it was Blue or Red Ribbon Committee, but it
I
was,
think you need to introduce yourself.
I'm Tom Power at 1812 East Front Street, Traverse City. I served on that committee, and everybody expected the place to be filled up when we expanded the jail and be filled up immediately, and it hasn't been. The jail has had considerable extra capacity at most of the time. But I thought it would be a good idea, since we are now having a problem, to go through some of the history. When Judge Rogers and I were elected, Phil in 1990, myself in 1992, we had 171 beds, and, now bear in mind, now we have 168 with this work release facility closed, less. We had 171 beds, and we were frequently, all the time, releasing prisoners early under an early release program. That's the situation that occurred in the 1990s. Now, since that time, various changes in sentencing practices have occurred. The use of alternatives, community corrections started in the 1990s, a sobriety court not long thereafter, and some of the other specialty courts that the district court has taken the lead in setting up. And we rather, within a matter of a couple of years, reduced it to the point that we had very little in the way of overcrowding releases. Then there was a further reduction when, and we'll go through that in a minute, when you have a chance to look at this sheet, I'll go through it with you. Then we expanded the jail in 2006. It was completed, I believe, pursuant to this Blue Ribbon Commission recommendation. At relatively modest expense, we added, I thought it was 38 beds, maybe it was 42, or something like that, in the area where the city police and the county sheriff had been in the current jail. We added beds, and that brought us up to 194, is the official Department of Corrections capacity. And we have not had early release since that time, until now. The problem with early release, well, there's a couple problems. There's a philosophical problem, we won't worry about that. Let's talk about the practical problem. If you're somebody who's in jail and part of your problem is substance abuse, I don't mean you just smoke marijuana once in a while or you drink too much on rare occasions. I'm talking about you do it all the time, so that it affects your ability to be productive in life and be successful. And it has resulted in contributed to the crime you committed. You're now in jail, and the judges say you need to deal with your substance abuse problem. And one of the ways we do it is partway through the jail sentence, we're going to release you early into a treatment program. And the hammer is that if you don't cooperate and participate, then you come back and complete your jail sentence. And that's the arrangement. But if there's no hammer, it's hard to make them complete the program. If you're an inmate and you're being told by the community corrections worker, we can let you out here at halftime, but you're going to have to go through this program, you're going to have to go through the meetings, you're going to have to participate in various counseling sessions in AA and so forth. Or in the alternative, you'll have to serve the rest of your sentence, but he knows or she knows, there's a lot more she's than there used to be in the jail, I'll tell you that. They know that if there's an early release program that is routinely used, that if they just sit another 2 weeks, they're going to get out anyway. So the reason to participate in alternate programs disappears if you know you're going to get out soon anyway. That's a problem with early release. Now, I'd like to go through this exhibit, which sets forth the history from 1990. First is population growth, and the census numbers are self-explanatory. The 2012 number is an estimate we got from Northwest Michigan Council of Governments. And if you go from 1990 to July of 1 year ago, we're up 38%. The jail beds was 171 in 1991, or 1990, and it was prior to that. In 2001, we closed, the jail, but with our support, I might add, closed 16 beds in the basement. That was a women's cell, and it was not supervised, and people had to go downstairs to look and make sure everything was okay. Well, having 16 people in jail in a one room or one large dormitory type setting without constant supervision is an invitation to something terrible happening, and so those beds were closed, and as I say, it had to happen. 2006, we finished the addition, which was building out the space that had been the city police, county sheriff offices. That brought us up to 194, according to the Department of Corrections. And then in 2013, we closed this low-security work release facility, supposedly temporarily. Is there anybody from the Department of Corrections here? Well, good. Don't tell them, because I have a fear that we might lose our grandfathered status, because it is not up to modern correctional standards with sprinklers and all sorts of stuff. So hopefully that's temporary. but now we're down to 168 beds in 2013. That's a decrease of just under 2% down in number of beds. Now, if the jail beds had increased after 1990, proportionate to population to 2012, we would have 237 jail beds. And remember, in 1990, we were frequently releasing people early. And then I have a little math equation down here. More population plus more police, particularly in the 1990s, we added a lot to our police force in some sense. More prosecutors, we just added another prosecutor, I think just recently. More population plus more police and more prosecutors does not equal fewer jail beds. That doesn't work. So, question of how you deal with it, and I think the sheriff has an analysis of options. Historically, fall is the highest jail usage time. That's been true over the years. And I assume that's because summer's more active, people out and about, including people who are doing things they shouldn't be doing. And there, of course, there's more people up here with tourism and so forth, and summer people. And those crimes go through the system and show up in jail in the fall. And that is our highest jail usage period. And even with that, with 194, I don't think we had any boarding out in the last few years. But at this point, 168 is not going to do the job. You might want to consider boarding out to deal with that 2-3 month bulge in the fall, because that's when it's needed. Judge Rogers and I are pretty strongly of the position that we had 194 beds and we're not inclined to engage in early release because of the closure of 26 beds. That there may be good administrative reasons for that in terms of staff usage and so forth, but that's not a loss that we take. We're going to take lying down, so to speak. I mean, it should. We need to have adequate jail space, and we did. Now we don't. So I would urge you to support boarding out or some other similar alternative. I think Sheriff Bensley and his staff have come up with proposals and options. You can consider them. Thank you for your time, and appreciate your continued support.
Thanks, Judge.
Thank you, Judge. Anyone else wishing to speak at this time? Okay, moving forward, we have a special order of business. That would be the audit presentation. Dean, do you want to set this one up for us?
I will. We have Steve Peacock with Raymond here tonight to present our 2012 audit report. Steve is the principal in charge of the county audit. He's been in charge of our audit for a good number of years, and with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Peacock.
Thank you, Mr. Bott. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you mentioned, my name is Steve Peacock, 5426, actually office address is 107 South Cass Street, Suite A. I am, in fact, the audit partner responsible for the audit for Grand Traverse County, and I know you have a 255-page document that you have received either electronically or in paper format. But what I thought I'd do is change things up a little bit and start with the letter that appears in your packet. This is a required form of communication that the auditor is required to have with those charged with governance, which is you fine folks. And by the way, I do appreciate you moving the meeting by a week to accommodate another presentation I had last week. This letter essentially is kind of the wrap around the audit. It doesn't talk a lot about specific financial numbers. It does talk about the performance of the audit. So I thought I'd start here, go into some specific items in the audit, and then I've got something I need to pass out here at the very end. So starting with the letterhead dated June 26th, independent auditors communication with those charged with governance. Again, this is a required correspondence with the board. You'll see the first bold heading talks about the auditor's responsibility under auditing standards generally accepted in the U.S. I'm not going to read this to you. Everybody's here capable to read this, but I'll let you know what this means. First paragraph says that on March 14th, 2013, we issued an engagement letter to the county management, and that engagement letter set out certain objectives and certain tasks that we were going to perform. I'm here to report to you that we have done those according to the engagement letter and have issued our report thereon on the financial statements. The next paragraph talks about the auditor's responsibility with respect to internal controls. We gain an understanding of these internal controls, however, we do not audit the internal controls. We have to gain a certain level of understanding for the audit process, but again, an expression of opinion does not occur on the internal controls. The last paragraph on that first page discusses or refers the reader to the single audit, which is required for any municipality or any nonprofit that expends more than $500,000 of federal funds. You are in that situation this year. So there is a single audit that appears in the back of the document with your financial statements. So that refers the reader to those opinions in the financial statement. At the top of page 2, other information and documents containing audited financial statements. I'll just take you to the very last sentence in that paragraph. We have compared and reconciled the supplementary information to the underlying accounting records used to prepare the financial statements or to the financial statements themselves. But some of this information is not covered by the audit opinion. You have a CAFR, or a Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, which has a lot of statistical data. We read that to make sure it's consistent with the financial statements, but our opinion does not cover that. Likewise, the management's discussion and analysis is not audited, but we make sure we read that to make sure it's consistent with the financial statements. Under plan, scope, and timing of the audit, we had multiple planning meetings that concluded on March 26, 2013, that confirmed our benchmarks we laid out internally as an audit staff, as well as with Mr. Bott on the finance staff over here. And again, those benchmarks have been met and the report has been issued. Under significant results of the audit, qualitative aspects of accounting practices, this talks about what notes are disclosed in footnote number 1 to the financial statements. You did adopt 2 new accounting standards this year, 63 and 65. It changed your statement of net position just a little bit, and we'll talk about that when we get to that. But they were pretty minor adoptions for the governmental accounting standards boards, not a whole lot of meat with respect to that. The next paragraph and the bullet points that follow thereafter are discussing any accounting estimates that are embedded in the financial statement. And in this financial statement, there are 4 estimated useful life of depreciable capital assets, accrued compensated absences, allowance for uncollectible receivables, and actuarial valuation methods used in the pension disclosures are estimates. The last sentence at the top of page 3 after the bullet point, we evaluated those key factors and assumptions used to determine that these estimates and determining that they are reasonable in relation to the financial statements taken as a whole. So your audit firm concurs with the estimates made by management. Under difficulties encountered in performing the audit, there were none. Corrected and uncorrected misstatements, there is an attachment to the document that shows both past and non-past adjustments, which we'll go over shortly. Upcoming changes in accounting standards, there's an attachment C that has some gripping accounting standards that I'm sure everyone will want to read as far as changes in governmental accounting that's coming up. We'll talk just briefly about a few of those. Under disagreements with management, again, we are pleased to report that there are none. Management representation, there is a letter attached. It's the last 6 or 7 pages to this document. It's a letter that the management of the county sends to the audit firm that basically tells us that they have given us everything we've requested, and it's true and accurate to the best of their knowledge and belief. Under management consultations with other independent accounting firms, we are not aware of any consultations with other accounting firms. In the event there is, the standards do require that we are notified so we can make sure the fact pattern delivered to the 2 firms is the same. Under other audit findings, at the top of page 4, we don't have any. We've got some findings in the single audit, but we'll talk about those momentarily. So I'll direct you then now to page A1, which is the attachment. The first 5 or 6 paragraph discusses the material weaknesses, significant deficiencies, and control deficiency language. But suffice it to say, under other matters, these are internal control recommendations that we make to the county. Under fund balance policy update, last sentence in that paragraph, we recommend the county update its fund balance policy to reflect the standards set forth in GASB 54. Under workers' compensation, liability, and funding report, recommend the county obtain an analysis for 2013 for this liability on a go-forward basis. It's been 2010 since you've had your last one, so we're looking for an update in 2013. Again, these are recommendations and are not findings, okay? Under the pavilions, review of general journal entries, page A2. last sentence. We recommend that journal entries be reviewed at least monthly or more frequently to ensure discrepancies, whether caused by error or fraud, are detected in a timely manner. Just some general observations that we made in our audit to make sure that, tighten up internal controls a bit here with those 3 items. On page B1 is schedule of adjustments that were passed. These are adjustments that could have been made by management, but based on the fact that they were immaterial to the financial statements taken as a whole, we concurred with management in not making these adjustments. You'll see the general fund is the first caption, but if you pay attention to those percentages, 1, 2, 3, 4th line down, that's basically what we hang our hat on, is the fact that they are very small in nature and we can live with those differences not being recorded. Likewise, the next fund is the CDBG grant, or CDBG fund. You'll see the overall effect of those adjustments is relatively minuscule. Commission on Aging had a couple non-major governmental funds. Overall, you'll see as you continue through to page B2, internal service funds, the governmental activity funds, pavilions, and non-major enterprise funds ultimately had some past adjustments, but keep in mind that they are very small in nature, and the accounting firm concurs with those not having been made. Okay, moving into Appendix C, or Attachment C, I'm sorry. These are upcoming accounting pronouncements that may or may not affect the county. If they do not affect the county, it does say so. But we do want to make sure we get all of the upcoming accounting standards in front of the board. GASB 66, technical corrections to GASB 10 and 62. If you look at the last sentence on there, we do not expect 66 to have any significant impact on the county at this time. The GASB 67 is financial reporting for pension plans. And again, the last sentence in here, because the county does not maintain its own pension trust fund, we do not expect 67 to have any impact on the county at this time. GASB 68, accounting and financial reporting for pensions. This is the new one, and you may or may not have heard about this. This is a pronouncement that will require the recording of a liability for any unfunded pension obligations on June 30th, 2014. I'm sorry, 2015. So you do have some unfunded liabilities that you see in the schedules that follow the footnotes of the financial statements. And if this pronouncement stays the way it's written today, those liabilities would appear on the balance sheet of the county. Okay? And those can be substantial. So we'll talk about those in just a moment if any further commentary on that. GASB 69, governmental combinations and disposal of governmental operations. Again, last sentence in that disclosure, given the infrequent nature of these types of events, we do not expect this standard to have any impact on the county. GAS 70, non-exchange financial guarantees, similar. We do not expect 70 to have any impact on the county. The remaining part of this letter is the letter from the county that is sent to us, which is our representation letter. And you'll see in there's a lot of language that talks about the county giving us the records that we had requested, and they are true, accurate, and to the best of their knowledge and belief. So that is the SAS letter. I'll briefly go into the document. Again, 255 pages. We could make a weekend out of this if you wanted to, but I'll just touch on some high points here. The audit opinion begins on page 21. It's a much more lengthy audit opinion this year than you may have seen in years past, but kind of like our engagement letters and our rep letters, everything seems to be getting more lengthy than they are getting short. Long and short of this opinion is a clean or an unqualified opinion, and where you can find that is on page 22 of the opinion, on 22 of the document, under the top where it says opinions. In our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the governmental activities, business type activities, aggregate, discretely presented component units, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information of Grand Traverse County as of December 31, 2012, and the respective changes in financial position and, where applicable, cash flows thereof, and the respective budgetary comparison for the general fund and each major special revenue fund for the year then ended in conformity with the county principles generally accepted in the U.S. Phew, that's a lot of words. Clean opinion, unqualified, So that's good news to you as those that are charged with governance. The other information in this opinion is covered similarly as to what we discussed in the SAS 115 letter. So what I'll do here is I'll direct you to page 38, which is your statement of net position. That is a new title under the new GASBs. It used to be called statement of net assets. It has been changed to the statement of net position, so that may look differently from what you had last year. In addition to that change of the actual statement title, you'll see the second bold caption on the statement of net position, about halfway down the page, deferred outflows of resources. That is a new caption on the balance sheet that comes out of GASB 65. Deferred loss on advance refunding of the bond, that item is a deferred outflow, so that hangs out there. Normally, that would have been reported up in the assets with the balance sheet, but under the new GASBs, we do segregate those. In addition, under liabilities, shortly after liabilities, you see deferred inflows of resources. This is the converse to the deferred outflows. Property taxes that were levied for subsequent years ends up on this balance sheet caption. Before, it was recorded as a deferred liability in the liability side of the balance sheet. So not a lot of changes. They just broke things out and called them a little different terminology year over year. Okay, overall, I talk about this primarily from the first column under the primary government, $77 million of total assets for the county, consisting principally of depreciable capital assets of $32 million, land of $16 million, and then cash and receivables would make up the difference of the balance. Okay, relatively consistent year over year. Overall liabilities of $21 million in total consist principally of long-term debt, accounts payable, and some unearned revenues that the county has received in advance. Overall, the bottom portion of this document is your net position, or formerly known as your net assets. Overall net position of $53,350,000, comprised of $36 million capital assets minus the debt that is applicable to those capital assets. And then you also have some other restrictions that are disclosed in there. Suffice it to say that under governmental activities, you have $6.7 million of unrestricted fund equity. Okay, it doesn't mean it's cash available for spending. That is just what your net position is on an unrestricted basis. On page 40 and 42 begins the income statement for the county. You look in the first column, it talks about the functions and the programs. The next is the actual expenditures. We start with expenditures in the governmental model. And if you look down, you'll see the governmental activities, business type activities. Then you get total primary government, which would be Grand Traverse County proper, of $78.4 million in total expenditures. Then you work your way across the document. You add to that indirect expense allocation, your charges for any services, operating grants and contributions, and then capital grants. Overall, net expense position of $27.9 million, almost $28 million. So that's all the net expense activity. Then if you roll over to page 42.
Just to let you know, we don't have that document.
Oh, you don't have that document?
No.
Oh, it was sent to you in a separate email.
It
don't have it.
It came to us in a separate folder.
You do have the document, it's
We
not
have
in
it.
your packet. So Steve, I don't know how much further you want to go with the actual audit. Let's maybe, if they
Technical
can't
difficulty.
access.
My system didn't, it must have been too large, it never went through, but.
It is a large file,
Yeah, what we need
for
to do is
sure.
get the original, we need to get copies so we can
Well,
review
it
them.
was provided, so that's not Steve's fault.
Yeah.
Steve, you were going to,
Oh, the only comment I was going to make on the income statement, Dean, was the fact that for the year ended December 31st, 2012, under the government activities, there was a net change in position of a $2 million loss, if you will. $2,072,804 net operating loss, okay? If that were to continue with a $6 million unrestricted net assets, you got about 3 years of that type of losses to basically burn up unrestricted net assets. So I'm not telling you that I'm really nervous here because I have a lot of confidence in you as far as making the right decisions to turn this in the other direction. But $2 million in a net burn for the 1 year is tough.
and just one quick comment on that. The majority of that is the use of the funds in our state revenue sharing fund, the allowable transfer back to the general fund for operating purposes. So that is a planned use
Yep.
of fund balance. And as Steve said, it's, if you would continue that trend, we would definitely have a problem, but we are not going to continue that trend. When those funds are exhausted, that use will no longer be built into the budget.
Yeah, the state plans to make us half instead of whole for that money.
Yes.
Okay.
That's as of today.
As of today, yeah.
Yes.
That's $1 million hole for
Yes,
014.
I got that.
Right.
Yeah.
15, yeah.
Okay, considering that not everybody has this document in front of them, what I will talk about real briefly is, it seems to me that many of our clients are talking about GASB 68, which is the pension fund. The pension pronouncement, I'm sorry. And when you get your copy of the financial statements, in the back after the footnotes, there is a discussion about each one of the plans that the county is involved in. On page 104, the MERS Agent Multi-Employer Defined Benefit Plan for the primary government, that's for Grand Traverse County, as of December 31st, 2011, according to its actuaries, is $41.3 million underfunded. The retiree health care plan is underfunded by $6.1 million. And that's as of 2010. The pavilions are $3.7 million underfunded. And then the road commission, which issues its own financial statements, but that's a $2.9 million unfunded situation.
Now, Mr. Peacock?
Yes.
You're saying the pavilions is three-something million.
3.7 million, correct.
Underfunded. Is that for pension and retiree health benefits, or is that one or the other?
That is the defined benefit plan. That would be the pension.
Okay, thank
Yep.
you.
The road commission has two funds likewise. One's 2.9 and one is 5.5 that's unfunded. And the reason why I'm telling you these numbers and whether they resonate or not, under 68, these numbers are going to be required to be reported as liabilities on the books of the county. Okay? So if you do the math really quick, you can burn through a lot of net assets in a hurry. And 68 is a very controversial pronouncement. It's got a lot of talk. Many folks have written the GASB. I'm sure your legislative bodies have written GASB. I did a presentation this morning to the Community College Association. They have lobbied GASB hard to change this. And I'll be honest, I don't think they're going to change it.
Good.
So I think that what they are going to do is they may defer it by a year because under GASB 67, the pension funds have to be able to determine whose liabilities belong where. Now, that doesn't affect MERS because MERS knows where those liabilities are. But there are other state pensions that don't. For example, the Michigan public school system does not differentiate, whether it's school district A from school district B. So there's going to be a monumental task to break up this liability. So there may be a delay in 68 until they can get 67 kind of corralled and get the pension funds in the right position to comply. But I just don't want it to be a surprise to you, whether I'm sitting here talking to you in 2 years or not, that these numbers will ultimately get on your statement of net position and your net assets are going to bear the burden of those numbers. So.
But is it also not true that even though they will show up as an asset, we will have in place, and we do have in place, a repayment plan to make those accounts whole? Because we are making the appropriate payments as per the annual actuarials.
That's correct. And yes, you are absolutely correct. These will show up not as an asset, but as a liability on the balance sheet. And that will, the corresponding entry will be a reduction in net assets. So your net assets are going to go down, liabilities go up. You are complying 100% with what your actuarially required contributions are. And that's the most important part, because your actuary is giving you those numbers that's telling you that over time you will amortize this liability through contributions, whether it's in 10 years, 12 years, 20 years, whatever, however many years out, through your contributions and investment earnings, this is going to turn and go the other way. The Governmental Accounting Standards Board understands those provisions. However, their position is that these liabilities exist today, so why are they not on the books? I spent some time in DC last summer discussing 68 with some of the municipal units of government, colleges and universities, and the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, and they're very emphatic that this is the right thing to do. And I just don't want it to be a shock in 2 years when you had $58 million the previous year, and the next year you have basically zero, or even a deficit. So, yes.
That's my question. I don't know how to say this, but is it possible to come up with a negative net worth?
Oh, yeah. It's a deficit.
You bet.
Wow. What does that do to our fund balance then?
Well, nothing. It's the whole issue is, right now, if I can speak on this, is that nobody knows around the United States, all the counties, governmental agencies around the United States, is concerned about this disclosure because of one reason. We already know that we can take care of the liability by virtue of the payments that are coming in off of MERS or any other provider or vendor for the future liability of retirements. They set those payments and they set them by the actuarial rates and deaths and when they're going to retire and who's on it and who's currently paying and those kinds of things. So we can figure that out. We're currently flowing with that payment amount. So we've got it in the budget. The issue is, does this liability affect the bond ratings of the counties moving forward and our ability to have a AA bond rating? Is the market the market hasn't reacted yet. Standard & Poor's, Moody's, everybody else hasn't reacted towards this GASB decision on this additional liability that will show on your balance sheet that was not there before. So we don't know if that's going to change the bond rating to something substantially lower, which would increase our expense and our ability to go out and bond, or are they going to leave us alone? That's the bottom line on this deal.
Commissioner Inman is very correct. We've reached out to Moody's and S&P because many of our clients have floated bond issuances in the last couple of years, and as we consult with bond counsel in our consent letters, we always ask the question, what are you guys seeing 68's going to do? And nobody will tell us the answer. They just won't.
I don't think anybody has the answer.
They don't know, but the good news is, if there is a silver lining around the cloud, is everybody's going to have this happen at the same time, whether it's a county, a township, a city, school district, a college, university, authorities. It's all going to happen across the country on June 30th, 15.
Chris?
Those of us who have any knowledge or association with private business who would like to omit liabilities from our financial statements raise their hands. It doesn't happen in private business. It should not happen in government. And so I do applaud GASB for moving forward with this. And that's, and Commissioner Inman, honestly, I trust MERS about as far as I can spit, which isn't very far. If you take a look at some of their their history, they do not, MERS, in my limited knowledge, education, whatever you want to call it, experience, they do not assume, let me put it this way, MERS is more optimistic than markets have been. And as a result of their optimism, our government liabilities are increasing. So I don't really trust MERS. I do appreciate the fact that GASB is going to put this on the books. A liability is a liability.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
One of the provisions, Commissioner Maxbauer, is that as kind of an industry standard, actuaries have used 8% return on pension funds. Anybody in the room can get a tough time getting 8% today. So the standard is going to require them to show actual results. I think it's a look back of 3, 5, and 10 years, and then prepare actuarial analysis based on that. In light of that, if the rate of return goes down, what's the liability going to do but go up? So those numbers we're talking about today that are based on 8% are going to go up, unless we can substantiate a market that's going to bear 8% or more. So
It's going to get worse.
it could get very much worse, yes. Yep. As you go to your association meetings, I don't know if you've had discussions about this within your association meeting, but it's a very hot topic for governments.
Right.
Nobody knows.
But you know, the bottom line is the money is owed.
That's right. Yep. I think what you're going to find out of the city of Detroit, what the actual resolution of those pension obligations, that's going to be an interesting play on what other municipalities may do, how it may affect their liabilities. So that's going to be a test case, right, probably get decided right around the time 68 becomes effective. So we're watching that with a keen eye. So if there's ever any questions on 68, or if you ever want a one-on-one or whatever, I'm happy to come talk with you about it, kind of walk you through some financial modeling. Along with the changes in the liability, there will be substantial disclosure changes in the footnotes. What you have now is a few pages. This is going to blow up probably 6, 8, or 10 pages more of pension disclosure. A lot of it will be tabular format showing estimated returns and estimated payments and so forth. A lot of actuarial data will appear in your footnotes. So.
I guess I have a question, if you wouldn't mind, Mr. Chairman. The board has talked about, and the administration, Dave Bennett, is looking into and along with Dean, Finance Director, the feasibility of, because the cost of funds is so low today to go out and bond, and we still have the AA bond rating, is that Dave is looking under a couple scenarios that he would have to explain to us at a future date, but the possibility of going out to the market. And we do have the law that was changed within the state of Michigan. If you got a AA bond rating, you're allowed to go out and bond your unfunded portion of your defined benefit program and bring that back in to supplement that investment, and then get a return off of it. Now, from an accounting perspective, from your audit perspective, how are you going to treat that? Are you going to show that as a liability and an offsetting asset, or are you just going to cross the two off?
The liability, if you bond the liability and the liability is presented to the audit firm by the actuaries as zero or a small amount, that liability portion would go down dramatically and be replaced with your bond debt.
Okay.
So you'd still be there in total, but one would be bond debt, one would be unfunded pension debt.
Okay.
But it's an interesting process, and we have other clients that are thinking exactly the same thing about bonding the debt.
Okay.
So you're not alone.
Dan?
Well, so essentially, if we bonded, it would make all that disappear.
Could.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it would control our expense for liability moving forward.
Yep.
Control
We
our
would
payment.
still owe the money.
I know that.
But we probably would
I
end
don't
up
doubt
paying
that.
less over the long run if we bonded it.
But then again, you have to trust MERS.
No, we don't have
and
to
they're-
trust MERS at that
Pay
point
'em
in
all.
time, because
We pay
we're bonding our
MERS off.
unfunded
And you're
portion.
saying that based upon their past history, that they're going to predict their actuarials accurately in the future?
We would get
I'm
a cur-
sorry, I'm just not,
No, I'm sure the county's going to do an actuarial study to make sure that we have the correct amount. We're not going to rely on MERS.
Wouldn't you
I would
essentially-
hope not.
Wouldn't you essentially just pay them off with a loan? Wouldn't that what would be?
Basically, we would fund the unfunded
Right.
portion as an investment portion, so we would supplement the differential.
Right. Just keep in mind also that 2 years after that, to the extent that healthcare is affected in your MERS retirements, this is only the pension piece. 2 years after this becomes the healthcare piece.
Yeah.
So to the extent that you have healthcare benefits with respect to that, that number could be similar, bigger, smaller, but if you don't use the healthcare portion, then
Limited number of units that have that.
yeah. I don't expect that to be a huge number, but just remember that the pension goes first in 15, the healthcare goes second in 17, so.
Pay them all off. Just pay that off.
Hope springs eternal.
Yes, yes, indeed. Just real briefly, I'll talk about the single audit if we're done with 68, unless anybody has any questions on 68. With respect to the single audit, you'll find on page 251, if you're taking any notes, financial statements, again, we issued an unqualified opinion on that. There was a material weakness identified, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. Under the federal awards program, there were 2 opinions issued. One is the opinion over the internal control. That was unqualified or clean as well. There were no material weaknesses and there were no significant deficiencies identified. The audit opinion that covers the actual testing on the major programs for the audit was an unqualified opinion or clean, and there were no matters of noncompliance required to be disclosed, so that's more good news. The four major programs that were tested as part of the single audit were women, infant, and children, bioterrorism funding, H1N1, immunization cluster, and the child support enforcement. So those are the four major funds that were tested out of your total, it was 3.5 million. Yeah, $3.5 million of federal expenditures. So those were the four that were required to be tested. We had two findings in which to report on. One is a material adjustment finding. During the year, the condition was caused by an error in the journal entry posted to adjust interest receivable on delinquent taxes to agree with supporting schedules at year end, as well as pavilion accounts receivable balances were initially misstated due to management's not initially evaluated aging balances at year end for necessary contractual adjustments and write-off. We recommend that the adjustments referred to above be reviewed by management, posted to the county's records, and are reported correctly in this audit report. We recommend the county review each year-end closing procedures to prevent such oversights from occurring in the future. I am 100% confident this will not come back again next year. So I think this was an isolated incident that will be rectified in the following year. The other item was a financial statement finding number 2. Preparation of schedule of expenditures of federal awards. Management is required to have the ability on staff to prepare that, which they do. The fact that the condition was, we noted an error in the initial schedule of expenditures of federal awards provided by management. The error was related to the omission of non-cash assistance received as part of the Public Safety Interoperable Communications Grant. So once we identified that, to see if it was correct. But we have a responsibility to report that to you, that it was missing in the initial draft. And again, I don't believe that will be a repeat comment again, one-time isolated incidents. There were 3 findings that were present in the 2011 financial statements. Material audit adjustments also appeared in last year's. That was a repeat comment for this year. 2011 single audit finding 1 was the documentation of payroll cost in accordance with OMBA 87. That finding was resolved. Single audit finding number 2, timeliness of reporting for the cooperative reimbursement program. That has also been rectified in the current year. So you're making progress as we work through the audit. This document does not get created without a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and Dean and his staff are second to none in getting us information and getting it to us as quickly and timely as possible. So without his help, we could not be here sitting across the table from you with a 255-page audit report. So, are there any questions on the statements or on our SAS letter?
Does anyone have any questions at this time? Dean, do you have any follow-up comments?
No.
For David?
No.
Okay.
I just have one item to go through real quick. On page 18, you will find a copy of the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting for Grand Traverse County. This document is different from many other counties or municipal units of government. This is a CAFR, or a Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. Not everybody prepares this type of a report, and you do it to inform your citizens not only of finances, but of many other statistical tables about the county. Many other tidbits of information that are relevant to the operations of the county appear in this document, and that's what makes it a CAFR. This document is submitted to the Governmental Finance Officers Association for its recognition for either compliance with the Certificate of Excellency or not. And I am pleased to report to you that 2011 received a Certificate of Excellence in Reporting, and that is right here. It is similar to the ones you see downstairs by the elevator.
We're going to have to add a wall on the main floor for Dean and his staff.
The Dean Bot wall.
Well, and this may...
that's a good thing.
This may seem like something trivial. I don't mean to say the word trivial, but this is a lot, there's a lot that goes into this. And it's independently reviewed by many other accounting firms that have the GFOA committee that evaluate this document long after it's been issued. So 2012, you probably won't see until wintertime or spring next year, because it takes time to get through it. This is a true testament to what is provided in your annual report. So I would like to get this over to David and to Dean in recognition of a job well done for 2011.
Is this 7 years in a row?
Yes.
7 years in a row.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All
Dean.
right.
Any other questions?
Nope, thank you for
Okay.
coming tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, we will move forward to the consent calendar. If you would read the consent calendar, please, sir.
Chairman, can we do approval of the agenda first?
Oh, well, we probably could, but I was going to kind of skip that.
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
All right, motion by Inman, supported by Rennie. Any further discussion? I was afraid somebody wanted to add something else, so I wasn't going to ask. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same.
Mr. Chairman, I was the one to make the motion on the minutes. I want to clarify they were for the June 18th minutes. For the minutes. I just want to make sure they're correct.
Okay, you had a question on the June 18th?
No, I had the wrong agenda up. I loaded up last month's and had to go find the other one, so it got screwed up again this month. I started reading off the past,
Those of
last
us
month's
who are
agenda.
technologically challenged, you just
so I picked
gotta
up the wrong
roll
date.
with us for a little while.
So I made a motion to approve the May minutes. I need to make a motion to approve the June 18th minutes.
Oh, you just had the date wrong when you
Yes.
stated the minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
The 19th? June 19th?
June 18th.
June
It
19th?
says June 19th.
June 19th, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, June 19th.
You just had the date wrong.
Glasses.
I had the date wrong when I made
Glasses.
the motion, if I could make that correction.
That's
Okay,
moving forward to the consent calendar.
okay. The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one committee motion without discussion. Any member of the committee, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed therefrom and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will automatically be respected. If any item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted received and filed or approval is approved by a single committee action adopting the consent calendar. A, receive and file. 1, Conservation District Monthly Parkland Report. B, approval. 1, engine to be declared as surplus property.
Is there any item on the consent calendar that any individual in the audience wishes to have pulled? Any item the commissioners wish? Dan?
B1.
Okay. Okay, having heard that, I will entertain a motion to accept consent calendar item A1.
So moved.
Second. Motion by Max Barr, supported by Rennie. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Roll call
No,
vote.
thank you.
Unfortunately,
The
for
whole
one
one thing.
deal.
Lathrop,
Yes.
Max Bauer,
Yes.
Rennie,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yep.
Inman,
Yes.
Wheelock.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, Commissioner Lathrop asked to have the engine declared surplus property by the sheriff's office. Tom, do you want to speak to that also, or?
I don't know if he knows the answers, but I'm asking, why did the engine blow?
Looks like too old.
Well,
Forgot to put oil in it.
no, wait,
This is the-
wait, that was a,
Yes, the boat.
2000, was a 1990 engine, right? 2009. Okay,
That's
well,
like 2001.
I've had a lot of boats with much older engines than that. Just wondering, and then how much does the new engine cost? Was it ever overhauled? How many hours did it have on it?
There's more questions there than I can answer.
Yeah.
Tom Bensley, Grand Traverse County Sheriff. The engine, I didn't bring that information with me, but I believe it was about 12 years old. There was a piston that blew and ruined the piston and the cylinder wall, and at that point, we decided that we weren't going to try and repair that. We had some information, some of the, Sergeant Osi, who runs the Recreational Vehicle Division, had heard from some of the conservation officers. They had problems with that engine in some of their boats. We have had continual problems with that engine, and so at that point, we decided we're not going to mess with this. We're going to get a new engine. Thanks to Mr. Benda, he approved the emergent or exigent circumstances, and in less than 2 weeks, that boat was back on the water. We found some money, thanks to Dean, in our budget to cover those costs. We just didn't want to deal with that anymore. We didn't, and to have that analyzed and rebuilt, the cost could have been expensive. There was some talk that the crankshaft along with that particular piston and connecting rod would have to be rebuilt in addition to the cylinder head. And we weren't in a position to want to wait to have that engine rebuilt. It's on a boat that is in East Bay, that spends the entire summer in East Bay. And although we did have a smaller boat that we put there temporarily, that's a boat that we wanted to have in service as soon as possible.
I guess I'm not questioning, Sheriff. I agree with you.
Okay.
That you can have a situation where it's not worth putting money in the engine to get a new one.
Right.
I'm wondering why it blew in the first place, just because it's 10 years old or even 20. I've had boats with much older.
Well, I understand that too.
Was it ever overhauled? How many hours have on it?
Never had any overhaul. I don't have the hours. We could, I believe it was 585 hours
Which is not much.
on that engine.
Yeah.
We still have the engine. We haven't gotten rid of it.
I'm
We
just
can
wondering
have
why it
somebody,
blew is my question. That's, you know,
I can't tell you.
was it,
I really don't know.
what did it cost to buy a new one?
That number.
I'm sorry?
What was the number on the new one?
The new one was $18,200,
Well,
And we bought the 200?
225,
The 225?
because that one and the larger one weren't available.
Right.
I just,
Oh, you couldn't get the 250 either?
Yeah, if we waited a month.
Oh, okay.
The other one is available immediately.
I'm not complaining about
Okay.
what you did. What I'm wondering about is why it blew,
Okay?
and,
I can try and, I'll see what I can do to look into that, to have somebody look at it. It was one cylinder. The other one seemed to be okay. I don't know. They were idling along on the bay and it made noise and all of a sudden,
They were being
Stop.
towed.
so,
That was an oil-injected engine.
that's oil injected, correct.
Those oil pumps will go bad once in a while.
okay, so it could have been the oil pump.
It could have been.
So is the new motor a four-stroke motor then?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Yes.
Is it a Mercury also?
No, it's a Yamaha.
Yamaha, okay.
Was it outboard?
Yes.
Okay. All right, that's all
They're
I had.
both outboards.
Yeah.
I'll entertain a motion to
Yes,
declare
sir.
the engine surplus. Motion by Thomas. Do I have a support? By Rainey. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Thank you, Sheriff. Okay, that takes care of you might as well stay put because that
You're
takes care of that. And now we're going to talk
Stay right
about
here.
the request to add funds for boarding of inmates. I suppose Captain Hall's going to come and support you on this discussion.
Well, he's
He
gonna tell
has
you the
all
story
the
anyway.
correct answers. These are both cheers. Go ahead.
I'm Captain Bob Hall, I'm the jail administrator.
And I'm still Tom Bensley, the Grand Traverse County Sheriff. This discussion tonight is only for the very current and near future. It's not a discussion about a new jail. However, maybe in the future, we should have that conversation. We did not expect what's occurring to occur, or we would have planned and tried to budget for that. So, why is the jail full? Well, this is a busy time of year. The prosecutor's office has been authorizing more charges than has occurred in the past. An example of that is the felony and misdemeanor district court caseload so far this year has exceeded all of last year. There are 43 females in jail, which is double the number of the female population in January. The judges are sentencing the bad guys to jail. There's a higher percentage of serious crimes being committed, resulting in people being put in jail. We have temporarily closed, if you will, or are not using the work release, double wide, double long day release, whatever you want to call the building out back. We're not using that, which reduces the official jail count from 194 to 168 beds. In reality, we only have 162 beds because in one section of the jail, there are 6 two-person cells. We are only using We are only able, at this time, to put one person in each of those cells because of segregation issues, maybe medical, maybe administrative segregation, whatever. And Captain Hall tells me that since those cells were constructed in 2004, 4, 5, and 6, that he has a hard time remembering when, if at all, there were 2 people in each of those cells. So they were built to hold 12. Effectively, they have only held 6 people for the last 8 or 9 years. Why did we take the work release facility or day release facility and not utilize that? It's for day release inmates only. It's less, the facility is less secure than low security standards. In December, there were only 9 people in there on work release. Currently, there are 4. In December, we moved those 9 people over into the jail, which effectively gave us 4.2 employees added in the jail. They didn't have to staff that facility. Now we have 4.2 people more working in the main jail. Currently, our overtime is 30% less than it was last year in the jail budget. We would anticipate, if that continues, we're going to save around $51,000 in overtime costs. What have we done up until this point? In April, or March and April, we boarded out inmates at a cost of a little over $18,000. In April, May, and July, we early released 29 inmates. That saved 203 bed days. If we would have boarded them out, it would cost us a little over $6,000 to board those people out. Today's current situation, as of 8 o'clock this morning, I know it has changed. There were 176 inmates, 174 in-house. One is at...
One's at the Forensic Center.
For
the other
evaluation.
one's out on a writ to another county.
So, and again, out of that 174 in-house, 43 are females. We have some people, some inmates sleeping on the floor on mattresses. Currently, the staff shortage is 3 people over there. We are without one person who is out on FMLA leave. One is on a disability, and we have a new hire in training, which means they're just tagging along with somebody else learning the ropes. So effectively, they can't be on their own filling a position. We're always short somehow, and our best guess is that an average of 1.5 people throughout the year are not available for any number of reasons, some of which I just mentioned. So why are we here? Well, first of all, and primarily, the safe and secure operation of the jail is our #1 priority. Overcrowding poses a risk to jail staff, poses a risk to inmates. It's a sanitation issue. And if we compare the last 4 years, 2009, 10, 11, and 12, average daily population to the average daily population so far this year, we are 16 inmates above those averages today. We anticipate that the busiest months of the year, August, September, October, November, and December, that's going to be at least 16 inmates. Additionally, there is quite a chess game played every day determining who goes where and why with the classification system that we have to use. So where do we go from here? Well, we're going to anticipate that we're going to have to reduce the jail population throughout the remainder of this year. And there are 4 options. The first is to reopen this facility. The advantages there are, #1, we gain 12 beds in the main jail. We have 2 cells that are currently rated for 6 people each. We can put 12 people in each of those cells if those people are released on a daily basis. If they were used to house inmates permanently with no work release, no release for work inside the jail or community release, then we are, there's 12 beds. Now, we talked to the Department of Corrections, and we are going to be able to increase that amount from 12 to 18 beds with some modifications in those 2 cells. And the way they are designed, simply, in one cell there are 3 2-person cells within a cell. If we take the doors off of those cells, it becomes a dormitory. With the space requirements, we can put more people in there. Did I get most of that correct?
That's pretty good.
Okay. So, we've been working with the Department of Corrections to allow us to use more of the beds that we have there.
I might just say, we're not adding to the 194 bed capacity of the jail. We're just being able to put more general population inmates in that unit. If we remove the inmate workers out of it, we were only able to put 6, they'll let us put 9. So we're halfway to what we used to be.
So that's some of what will happen. We will open that facility. Basically, what we're doing is taking, and I think the count today was 23 in those 2 cells, 23 people, putting them over here, but that just gives us 12 available beds. And hopefully soon it'll be 18. The disadvantages is we will have to staff this 24 hours a day. That'll take 5.5 employees from the main jail staff, and that will all be overtime because it's going to be a 24-hour-a-day operation. In addition to the 3 corrections officers, we are currently short, if you will. There will be a significant increase in overtime. Corrections officers are going to be overworked. Sometimes it's very hard to fill those overtime positions. Even with those additional 12 or 18 beds, the jail's still going to be full. There'll be some operational costs to opening that facility. What will that cost? Again, by looking at our schedule, and we looked at a 28-day schedule, 28 times 3 shift is 74 shifts that would have to be filled. And we looked at this a couple of weeks ago. 69 of those shifts very simply would have to be overtime shift because of the number of people required to be in the main jail. So for a 2-week period of time to open that facility, the cost would be about $11,500 in overtime costs to open that facility. Another option, too, is to board out inmates. We have immediately, jail population reduction. We have immediate bed space availability. We have more flexibility in how we put people and where we put them with the classification. And it's the easiest option for staff. When we get full, we know we can board people out. Some disadvantages: we are responsible for any medical and transportation costs, and there are medical and transportation costs. We try to keep those at a minimum, obviously, because the surrounding jails don't want problem children. They want good people who cause no problems, have no issues, whether it's discipline or medical or whatever. And we would still be full because we're anticipating an increase in the average daily population. So what are the costs to do that? Well, if we take the cost of opening up 12 beds in the main jail, by opening the facility, we're still using the number 12. What do we do to get 12 beds? We open this facility or we board out. So, the opening this facility cost in 2-week period of time was an increase in the overtime of $11,500 every 2 weeks. To board out 12 inmates for that same 2-week period of time is $5,040. That's a considerable savings. If and when we get the 18 beds available, if we were to board out 18 inmates for that 2-week period of time, it's a little over $7,500. Still well below the $11,500 to utilize the 26 beds we're currently not using. But there are the ancillary costs for transportation and medical. Those are kind of, up in the air. Obviously, we're trying to control our costs. And again, there are minimum security inmates with no medical, mental health, or institutional behavioral issues that we board out. So we want the best, and the other jails want that also. Option 3, let them out, early release. Gives us the bed space, there's minimal, if any, overtime, and there's no cost. Doesn't cost anything. The negatives with that, that's up to the judges. We can't just open the door and let them out. We take a list of the judges, say, hey, here's the people who have, and what they're in for, what their sentence was, how many days they've served, and they look at it and say, okay, you can let this guy out, this guy out, this girl out, this girl out, and that lowers our populations. With a higher percentage of more serious crimes, at some point in time, the judges may say, nope, keep them. And then our only option is to board them out. That, I think, will degrade the judicial system somewhat, as Judge Power indicated, and the prosecutor. The alternative programs, which we or the courts are fully engaged in, such as community corrections, specialty courts, and work release, they'll opt out of those knowing that, hey, I'm only here for a short time or a long time, I might get out early, so I'm not going to go through with those programs. Option 4 is Captain Hall's choice, and that's let's build a new jail. However, that's not going to happen anytime soon, okay?
That's 5 years.
So here's some comparisons. In 2000, have I missed anything so far?
No, you're doing an excellent job.
Thank you.
Just ask him that every 2
Save the
minutes.
best for last.
I keep checking because Captain Hall has been there 35 years, and he is the jail administrator. He does an outstanding job with his staff. They've been working very hard over the past several months trying to keep people in jail with the shuffle. So, here's some comparisons. In 2012, Wexford County spent $542,000 boarding inmates out. So far this year, they've spent $321,000, and they project this year's cost at $700,000 to board people out.
They're throwing money away.
Our past boarding out costs, and I don't know if there were any prior to 2002, but this is off the financial program with the county and the line item used. In 2002, Grand Traverse County spent $81,000. 2003, it was $175,000. 2004, it was $205,000. 2005, it was $288,000. In 2006, $122,000 boarding prisoners out. So, busiest months are coming up. How much is it going to cost? Can't tell you, because we don't know, because we're not there yet. But if we were to board out 10 inmates a day, and the going regional rate is $30 per day, for the months August through December, which is 150 days, that's $45,000. If we were to board out 15 inmates a day from August through December, that would be $67,500. These are just figures. Not asking for that amount, don't know what that figure is going to be. Again, these estimates don't include the transportation and medical costs, if there are any medical costs. If you have any questions on the cell arrangement and where we have 12 beds but can only use 6, or where we have 12 and currently have 22 or 23 people there, and we'll get 12 or get 18, Captain Hall can show you. He has a diagram of the jail. If you want that explained, he can do that very well. But in the 2009-2012 strategic plan for the county, one of the goals was the safety of the community is of utmost concern. County government that encourages risk-taking and innovation to increase the efficiency and effectiveness of our services to better serve our constituents. And a county government that emphasizes fiscal responsibility in its planning for today and the future. I think we hit those all, hit the nail right on the head with all three, with what we've been doing and what we hope to do. This board has continuously said public safety is a priority, and we in the law enforcement end of this appreciate those comments. The prosecutor has indicated he's supportive of what we're trying to do, and that is keep inmates in jail. Mr. Power has indicated that, and Mr. Haley, in a comment made to me last week, said that the district court judges were in support of what we're trying to do. So the bottom line is very simple. When the jail gets full, we're going to have to board them out, and that's going to take some money. Or we continually go to the judges and and ask them to let people out early.
Chris?
I do not want our judges to have to worry when they sentence someone to jail whether or not we have a bed for them. I have never been, nor am I today, a fan of early release. I think boarding out inmates during high season, if that's what you want to call it, is a reasonable request. And I guess that's all I have to say at the moment.
Dan?
Sheriff, I'm just wondering, you mentioned a number of years, 2006 and other years, we've boarded out before. So did you anticipate that in your budget, that you would be boarding out people?
No.
So
as I said, if we
that's
would
always
have
been
known.
an extra thing?
No, that was when the jail was full. That was prior to the remodel in 2005, 2006, where they added beds to the main jail.
So let's say 2004, you boarded out some people. Did you have to come to the board and ask then too?
I wasn't around then. Captain Hall has that answer, I'm sure.
We did originally, but when they anticipated the need to start the Blue Ribbon Committee, and then that blossomed into doing something with the main jail, where they added officially 39 beds to the jail. During that time, during the construction, they knew they didn't have room. The Finance Department and with the board set up a budget for boarding out, and they just kept adding money as we needed to board out. It's interesting to note that the day we opened up the jail, the remodeled part of the jail with 194 beds. We had 212 inmates in our jail. I mean, it was like we were putting a Band-Aid on an arterial bleed. It was nowhere near enough to deal with the total number of inmates that we had. But we worked with the courts. The courts did an excellent job. All the specialty courts kicked off. All the pretrial, post-trial diversion programs kicked in, and the numbers gradually sank down. But every time they sank down, they'd start climbing again, and a new program would come in, sink down. We knew it was going to keep climbing, and it has climbed. And like the judge said, and the prosecutor, we've initiated all the programs. The programs are running full steam, full board, and the numbers are now catching back up. Did you want to show this chart at all?
If you'd like to, we can turn on the television. He has the average daily population chart, and we took the last 4 years and compared it to the first 6 months of this year. That's how we're coming up with, okay, we're 16 more on average every day this year than we have been in the past. I think that's a fair comparison.
The red bars indicate monthly January through December. Whoops. That wasn't good. January through December, the red bars are the average of the last 4 years' average daily population. You can see our trends actually fall off through April, May, and then June. They start climbing. August, September, October, they're at the peak. The blue represents our average daily population just this year. You can see how high above our annual average that we're running so far, which makes me very nervous come August, September, October, as to where our numbers are going to be.
We all have to remember there's a certain number of people that come to the Traverse City area on vacation, and they get to go home on probation. But in between that, they have to have some time with Mr. Hall, and...
You mean like the two gentlemen from Wisconsin that are entertaining at the moment?
Well, just a couple remarks. One is that when I was at NACO, National Association of Counties, they had a gentleman there by the name of Mike Jackson, who happens to be the lead guy around the United States to help counties figure out what to do with their jails and to help them design, plan, and get the number of right beds for minimum, medium, and maximum, and review the flow and the sentencing practices and those kinds of things. And he did a real nice presentation that reminded me of something that we went through very similarly when we did the review with them. Sonny, you went out there with the National Institute of Corrections, so did Bob Hall, Dennis Aloya, I can't remember who else went out. I got invited, but I couldn't go. And we ended up working with them, and then we hired a consultant, Mr. Liebert, and we ended up reviewing the data of the jail as to, the flow and who was in there and how they were being assessed and how many days they were doing, so we can get a chart and a flow and a prediction of how that might, if those standards are going to continue to go in that same format over a number of years based on some growth patterns and so forth. So any event, my personal, I'm just making the remark that if we move forward with something other than outboarding or an expansion of the jail, then we're going to have to start one. And Mr. Jackson indicated in the presentation that it takes from the day you want to move forward with some kind of expansion, getting somebody in here, going out to the National Institute of Corrections, working with them, getting a consultant, doing the data within the inside of the jail, and then finding out what kind of jail you need, a number of different beds you need, and then predicting out the length of the life of the jail before you have to do another expansion, depending on growth things that you want to put down. You're looking at 5 years between the day you start planning to the day you open up the jail, because that process takes time, design, specs, bids, knowing what you want to build, going out and doing the public education, doing a millage request, actually doing the construction, moving everything over. That all takes time and implementation. And you're looking at 5 years on average that it takes to build a new jail and convert it over. That's if everything runs very smoothly. So I'm in favor of some level of outboarding dollars within the budget. The issue is it's financially, I don't know how our county can do this, is just to write a blank check. We can just, technically, financially, we can't do it unless we make a decision within this board that we're going to do some drastic reductions in our expenditures. Because if you do 20 people at 200, 40 people, which he was at in June or something in that area, that's $400,000 or $450,000 if you include medical and transportation. So you're really looking at $500,000. So, you know, if that's going to go upward, you know, if he's looking at 60 or 70 or 80 people on an ongoing basis, you're looking at $1 million a year. Well, we already have $1 million hole we haven't figured out for 014. We haven't even gotten in 015. So, you know, we have the practical side of, yes, we want to protect public safety, we want to have the beds, we want to have a plan in place. The only thing I would say is that if we're going to expend out money, we should isolate the amount we're going to spend so we know how to manage it in the budget. And two, we've got to have, the only way I'm going to vote for those short-term measures is we move forward with the plan for an expansion, either the expansion of the current site, which was designed to kick out another 50-bed pod, or we're going to say we don't want to develop that anymore. We're going to go to a new facility. We're going to start the process of NCIS and move forward, NCI, National Institute of Corrections, and start moving forward with the planning process. It appears as though, based on Judge Powers' analysis of the population and number of beds, which I appreciated him coming in and reminding us of these factors that we looked at the last time, we probably need to begin to start looking at the process of moving forward with some kind of new jail process, and then start moving forward with that educational piece. It only makes sense to outboard if you're going to move forward with the extension of new beds in a new facility. Either, you know, you're going to build out a new pod, or we're going to build a new jail. Then those interim monies that are budgeted, 200, 300, whatever that number's going to be, you know, we'll just have to live within those numbers, and plan to fill that into the budget. How we do that, I don't know. It's probably going to involve some drastic cuts and some, you know, FTE and operating expenses. But if that has to be, that has to be. But the only way it makes sense for us to do that is we have to plan and move forward with some kind of permanent expansion, because that only makes sense to throw those money dollars at our own facility and not help someone else build their own jail, or to pay for the expense of building their own new jail. So I think Dennis Lloyd told you that when he was here for 10 years, and based on the study and analysis that we went through with our consultant, that's exactly what they said. And yeah, as an interim, it's fine to pay those dollars. You just got to make sure that, you know, you've got that locked in the budget and you know where those dollars are going to come from. But right now, we're kind of stuck. I asked Dave about you know, what kind of reporting are we getting, so if we can bring a consultant in, we can start the ball rolling. And apparently this New World software thing that they installed over at the jail in replacement of the JAPIS program, they're having challenges with, and they can't get reports out, they can't get data out. You know, technically, they can't tell you, I don't know if they can tell you, you know, the flow in the jail and how many days and who was there and the classifications. It's not all in one report. So, you know, you got to have that information to understand what you need moving forward in terms of an expenditure, short term for outboarding, and two, for the long term plan of the expansion of the jail. So we got some work to do. I don't have a problem trying to find $200,000 for the end of the year, or, you know, half that right now for 5 months, under, you know, 80 to 100,000. But if we're going to do that, I want to see a commitment from this board that we're going to move forward and do the planning that we need to do for the future jail.
Other comments? David?
Yeah, the data is very important. I mean, I wasn't around for your Blue Ribbon Commission, but, you know, there was 3 Blue Ribbon Commissions in Midland before I started working on a jail there, and it was all about the data. Everybody was looking at who was sentenced, who was unsentenced, who was female, who was male, what their classification levels were. They wanted to know every little seam in the dishcloth of what the jail population looked like before anybody wanted to make any commitments for putting one brick on top of another to build a new jail. And I'm going to make that statement now for you, because it's going to come, those questions are going to get raised immediately when you start talking about these solutions. It's not, you know, Wexford County may be spending $300,000 a year, but I'd also venture a guess, they don't know who the heck they've got in there and who's being sentenced to what, and how many are sentenced and how many are unsentenced and how many are victims of slow processes through the system. I mean, do you want another blue ribbon commission? I think the judges know exactly how to handle the jail population. It's their tool. And they know, but they need the data. And I've got Don Sheehan working right now, apparently Laverne in the IT department has been through this a little bit before with the old system, and they're trying to communicate with the judges now and make sure that they can turn over every stone they can to see if they can get the data in the judge's hand. I'm comfortable with, boarding out inmates once the judges have looked at the list and said, we understand who's in there, and they're all staying here. We don't want to let anybody go now. And then, then the county is faced with the, either imposing a jail overcrowding act, state of emergency, or, putting up some money and putting these guys into a different place. Not so great to do, because they pointed out, only the best go, so the good guys leave, and what you get in your jail for Captain Hall and the people that work there are the worst of the worst, and they, they're the higher classification, just more violent, bad guys, and women. And, they don't get to use community corrections, even though they're the best of your best. When they leave, no community corrections, no good, you lose all those opportunities to fix their problems. So the people who are most fixable get sent away, so they can't be fixed. They just get warehoused in some other jail. So it's not just a simple solution. It's not simple. So I just wanted to throw out, data is important, and I've told the sheriff and I've told the judges, I'm not going to tell my board to support sending one dime to boarding out inmates until the data is in the judge's hands and they say, we haven't got any more room. And when the judges say, we see who's in there and we're not going to let anybody out, we don't want to let anybody out, then I'll support it. And I think you should too. And I'll recommend that you support it.
I guess.
But data first.
Oh, the data absolutely is important. For one thing, we've went through this block a long time. Larry talks about the pony program that we did at the National Institute of Corrections out in Colorado. Tom talked earlier about the Blue Ribbon Committee. I sat in those meetings for, 15 months, was it? Something like that. I got a nice white shirt when we were done with it.
I didn't get one.
But that being said, multiple different ways. If I remember, 5 different ways we projected what the jail jail requirement was going to be in this community by 2025, and we consistently came out within 5 beds one way or the other of 300. By 5 different methods. We brought Dennis Liebert here to look at our existing jail, talk about everything we could do to be more efficient. We brought David Bennett in here to look at everything we could do for alternative corrections. That's where, the expansion of the sobriety court, the mental health court, all of that stuff came down through. And you know what's left, folks? The people that need to go to jail. Everyone that could possibly be taken to an alternative court or an alternative program, those people are taken out of the system before they come before Judge Power or Judge Rogers. By the time they get to them, they really have no choice but just putting them in jail. It's either going to be in our jail or it's going to be in the state prison system. Now, the state prison system is another whole discussion about how that's changed, about who we can send there. There was a time that we held OUIL-3s in the county jail, and the state paid us to do that.
Right.
Those days are gone. They don't do that. Now, we're still holding the OUIL-3s because they won't take them there, but, they no longer pay us to do that. Jail population has always been about philosophy. I contend that the philosophy of our community is if you commit a crime here and you're convicted, your ass goes to jail. Whether or not you're sentenced to jail for 6 months or whether you sit in jail for 30 days and then you're put into a mandated alcohol rehabilitation program, I don't think the community cares. But there has to be a punitive portion. And I believe the community is very strong about there has to be a punitive portion. You know, I made that motion to build a new jail on Lafreniere at a meeting at East Bay Township a long time ago, Larry, and I was asked to withdraw the motion and, you know, be sufficiently cooled, and I was sufficiently cooled, but I still wasn't happy with the decision. You know, the fact is, we can talk all the time we want. By 2025, we need 300 beds in this community in jail, period. And you can talk about it any way you want, but that's what you're gonna have to have. You know, adding a 50-bed pod onto a jail that is already overloaded for infrastructure, a parking lot that we don't have enough space to park cars in right now, we're gonna put a pod in that parking lot besides, so we're gonna lose that much more parking space, makes no sense. Nothing is in the existing jail meets any sort of new requirements for efficiency and staffing other than, you know, the two little dormitory areas that we added would, you know, give us some indirect supervision, but they're still marginal. You know, the fact is, we need a new jail. That's $35 million, folks.
Yep.
You know, it's $35 million. It's time to start telling the community that we need $35 million to build a jail. If you want to have a safe community here, we need to find a way to find that money. Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, our discussion tonight is not whether or not to build a new jail, although you have been nothing if not consistent about beating that drum.
That won't change.
And I appreciate that as well. But maybe I come at this from a different perspective than others do. When people are released in the city of Traverse City, they come into my neighborhood. Although I do appreciate the two individuals from Wisconsin who
hit Acme,
who hit Acme instead of the city of Traverse City. But, you know, these are my neighbors. This is my neighborhood. And you know what? I am not, because I am impacted and I see how my neighbors are impacted, and I have to tell you, I mean, the stuff that has disappeared out of my yard, not to mention my neighbors who have been awakened in the middle of the night to find someone in their living room enjoying a cocktail that they did not provide. I mean, I can go on and on. But the question here before us is whether or not we are going to fund or are willing to fund, as near as I can tell, the possibility of outsourcing or lodging our inmates elsewhere. My question is, if we decide to do that, and I'm not in favor of a blank check. I'm not a fan of blank checks. But I'm willing to listen to a reasonable request. So, and so far what I've heard is a reasonable request. You know, they're seeing a problem, they're letting us know ahead of time. I don't want the judges to feel that they have to let people out on the street. Dean, is there money somewhere in the sheriff's budget that we can move? And if so, how much? I don't expect you to answer that tonight.
Well, first I agree with Dave, and I believe the sheriff and the captain do as well, that we have to have better data so we can manage. And the sheriff already has indicated that there are savings in the overtime line item, and that would be my first recommendation. We look at the personnel expenditures that you have budgeted here. They are understaffed presently, and if we do need, if the decision is to board out inmates at some point in time, that's where Dave and I would look to find the funds to cover that cost.
Then I'm fine with that.
Charlie?
Do you, based on your analysis here, have any estimate as to what it would cost us to board out these inmates for this calendar year going forward? Total.
Are you talking about?
Just based on what you have here, assuming some have to be boarded out, what do you estimate it's going to cost the county if we went to this outsourcing concept for the rest of this calendar year? You showed your curves going up,
Right,
coming into
right.
a bad
Well,
time. What does that translate into money?
We can't tell you exactly, okay?
Roughly.
I can't tell you exactly, just a couple examples. And you can slice the pie any way you want. But the example was, if for the months of August, September, October, November, and December, we would board out 10 inmates per day, okay? That total was $45,000.
Okay. Those green and red bars I see there, is that average out to 10?
No.
What does
No.
it average out to?
Well, that's 16.
Okay, so should we look at the 16 number,
Should
or?
be looking at 15.
Or 15?
You'd be looking at the 15, probably. is
Yeah,
more
if
accurate.
it's 15, yeah.
That translates to how much money?
Again, we don't know what's coming
That's
down the pipe.
$300,000.
We're just
Just to
taking
get
some
an idea,
averages
though.
and giving you some
Okay.
estimates. So
If we went
if it were 15,
Yeah.
this is every single day
Okay.
for 5 months, okay? That cost would be $67,500, okay?
Okay.
If it was 15 for every single day.
Okay.
Now,
For the year, it'd be
that would keep,
300,000.
that,
No,
no,
no, he said 67,000.
67.
You can't board 25 inmates out, or 15 inmates out for less than 300,000.
No, this,
Well, you got transportation costs, $30 a day, and medical costs. It's gonna be there, Sonny.
No way.
It is, we just did the numbers. We just did the numbers together. They're there.
Well, I'd like to know the number.
well, we're only
Here
talking
forward.
about, right now, we're only talking about,
This short term.
we see this, you know, the rat coming down the snake's belly, okay? And we need to deal with that, okay? We've put money in the budget for next year, anticipating this is gonna continue. I mean, that's what we do. We say, hey, this is gonna continue. The exact numbers, this is short-term. This is 6 months. If it was 5 years, we'd have better numbers.
Well, I don't
But
think we
those
can-
are the cost, for
I don't think we
the
can go 5
remainder,
years,
no,
but we might
for
be
the
able to go the
rem-
rest of the year if we have
for
an
the
idea how
remainder
much money
of
it
this
is.
year. That's what we're talking, for the remainder of this year.
I'd like to know the number.
$67,500. If we were to board out 15 inmates every single day. Honestly, I don't think it would be 15 every
I
single
would
day.
hope not.
Okay? But we do have some ancillary costs in the time spent taking somebody out of the jail, and they do this during the day, whenever it allows, to transport the people back and forth. All right?
So assuming 15 every day,
Yep.
what would those ancillary costs add up to over and above the 67,000,
Can't tell you.
roughly?
It depends, because
Depends on what medical conditions. We
medical
took-
conditions,
appendicitis
if something,
attack or not.
you know, these are just estimates. We can't tell you. I can tell you that, when I looked at the Wexford County figures, their transportation and medical costs were about 7%, okay, of what their total boarding out cost was, with the numbers I got, okay?
Would that be comparable to Grand Traverse County, you think? Like 10%, take a number? or-
Yeah, I don't know how
Okay.
far they had to move their inmates to. They're boarding out about 100 inmates a day.
I know they do a lot.
We would only send inmates that have known medical issues. But last April, we took 10 of them up to Charlevoix, and the engine on the vehicle, our transport vehicle, wasn't even cold yet when they called and said, one of your guys just had a seizure. Come and get him out of here.
No.
We had to turn around, go back all the way up there and get him and bring him back here, so.
Even though he was one of the best.
When he left, they must have done
He
something.
didn't have any history of seizures, so I
He had a stroke leaving your palace.
don't know. Maybe it was a
Well,
good.
we're
food.
not asking for a blank check.
But you have to
And
give
I
us some
agree.
kind of range so we
Okay.
have an idea.
Is it 100
I
for the
think
year?
that, we will do our best, okay, to keep that number as low as possible, which we have been doing in the past. The data, I'm not a techno person. We've been working with New World, and hopefully it can be done in-house. That information can be collected in-house. The preliminary figure I got last week from the New World people who sold us this system, it has everything in there, we just can't get it out, is somewhere around $32,000 for that program. to get everything
Maybe
we
we ought to
want.
ask them if they want us to pay them a maintenance fee next year.
Absolutely.
Whatever leverage you
Absolutely.
can
If they'd
put
like to
on.
lose
Whatever
that
leverage.
because we don't need their stupid system.
Well,
We've been
They
very
can't provide me
disappointed.
with basic jail data.
We've
It's
been
gotta
very
be in the bid
disappointed with
specs.
them.
I mean, how can they say you gotta do more? It's gotta
Am
be
I
in the bid
wrong?
specs.
I mean, this is
no, you're
ridiculous.
not. You're not wrong. It's ridiculous, and your argument is with New World, it's not with us.
I agree.
We agree.
I mean, I understand
okay?
that, and I hope you don't
So-
take it that I'm arguing
Oh,
with you.
no.
It's- I want that
But
data.
I understand that, but we're stuck with something that we're stuck with that system. We're not asking for a blank check, absolutely not. We've worked very closely with Dean when we looked in funding for the motor, and I'm not the financial director, but I listed 8 different places in our budget and other county funds where, hey, there might be some here, there might be some there, there might be some here, there might be some here. So we're just giving you these estimates. If we had 15, or you said, okay, here's your limit, or work with it, report back to us every month, see where that's going. We're happy to do that, okay? And if we need to board out 10 people, we'll board out 10. We won't board out 12. We'll put out what we need to keep the population down, to keep it manageable, to keep it safe in the jail, which is the priority. So, if it's month to month, that's,
Dave?
so.
Jail population is going to fluctuate from, day to day, month to month. You should probably not try and, figure out what the ancillary costs and all that. It should be expressed as an increase in the design rated capacity of the jail, which is kind of a weird calculation here because we have a work release facility that really doesn't house prisoners or inmates. It only houses work release people. And I really wonder if we turn that over to the district court and it was not part of the jail, if that would be included in our actual bed count.
I don't think
If we abandon,
would allow that.
yeah, if we abandon it as a part of the jail, our official count would drop to 168.
What if the district court ran it?
If
I don't
it's
think
not
the
part of the
Department of
jail, it
Corrections
wouldn't be
will allow
part
that.
of our,
correctional facility.
That's what I mean. Because it can be run by the district court, it is in other places.
yeah, if it's not,
It's not with,
part of the jail and run by the sheriff's office, it's not included in the,
something to consider, but I'm
that
not
counts.
suggesting that right now, I'm just kind of, sorry, taking up your time.
Yeah.
But you should probably express this as a number of beds increase in the design rated capacity rather than a dollar amount or anything else. You should say 10 beds or 15 beds or whatever the number's going to be, and then finance that at $30 a day. Everybody knows what the number is, they can do the math on it. This is the number.
Sounds good to me.
And it actually gives you an idea of how big your jail really is with extra beds outside the county. Does that make sense? Having
I
done
think
this a
we've-
few times?
We've discussed dollars long enough without coming up with any answers. But we have an obligation to the people of this county to keep the people who are put in jail because they need to be there. We have to cover that. And his only obligation as a sheriff is that he provide a jail. Okay, so ours is full. We still have to, as far as I'm concerned, let's move ahead with boarding the people out that need to be, and you'll take care of it. So my motion is let's move ahead so that we can take final action on it next week.
Mr. Chair,
I'll second that.
I'd like to amend his motion to allocate 15 beds to the sheriff's department for the remaining part of the year to outboarding. And then we would have a report from finance as to how we were going to cover that.
I think instead of changing the motion, what we
I'm not
should
going
do,
to, you have to listen, you have to
Can I
give, you
finish?
got to have the dollar amount of the beds.
I
Go
said
ahead.
that we're going to decide on it next week. And they're going to come back with what information they can give us.
All right, that's fair.
Okay.
So it's
Dan,
just to
you have
move forward
others?
with more information.
We're happy to sit down with Mr. Benda, Mr. Bott, and try to come to a solution, whether it's, we're just going to do this. Hopefully you would trust us to be very conservative in boarding these people out. Like I said, we've got people on the floor. There's a chessboard over there that they're shuffling around every day. as one option and report weekly, monthly, bi-weekly, or some other solution. And come back with, some financing options. Where's the money coming from? Our budget, contingency fund, whatever.
That's fair.
I was just asking, David, are you saying we should wait to do this until we get the numbers? Or is it, and Sheriff, are you saying we need it right now? I'm wondering.
Well, we can sit down in the next week and come up with.
Fix it, know the numbers? See, that's my point. You were saying that we shouldn't do it.
I've been asking for the numbers for quite some time, and they met with New World in May.
Yeah.
And we thought we were going to get an answer on that date, and we got nothing, and here we are at the end of July, and we are still waiting for this data. And we are making decisions about boarding inmates out, and we don't know, and the judges don't know, because they sentence from their benches separately. They don't know the whole picture of what's going on in there every day.
So the
and they
question-
need to know it every day.
So the question is, can we wait for those numbers until we make this decision?
I don't know. I think the sheriff
you can.
has a problem, and we have to address it.
When you've got a rated capacity of jail of 168 beds, you got 174 people in it, and they're right there. Is that the number that's true? Now, what I can tell you, if Department of Corrections comes in and determines that your jail is overcrowded, and they declare an emergency overcrowding, then the judges and the sheriff are going to be charged to reduce the population of your jail to 80% of its rated capacity.
But we're not overcrowded until we hit 194 for a period of 14 days.
Yeah, well, that's assuming that
And
they
that's what the
recognize
closed-
the outback. And that's
That's what the order from the
that's been
judges, which is now
that's been
expired, says.
marginal all the way along anyway, is whether or not we can continue to operate that, and we've been fortunate we've been able to do that. But I think, my problem is, I don't think, Larry, we can sit here tonight or next week and say, you can board out 15 prisoners. Because they may need 9 tomorrow morning, but they may need 18 on Friday. And I don't want that number to be a fixed number.
I'm just saying it's an average.
I think we have to charge the sheriff and the judges to adequately handle the population that needs to be housed. And I don't believe that we should sit here and tell them who should be in jail and how many people should be in jail.
And I absolutely agree with the philosophy of that. The issue is, when it comes back to us and we have a $500,000 hole, where are you going to cut it? Because you can't go to the fund balance, because we're at 18%. Where are you going to find it? That's why I'm saying you got to know the number.
We owe it to the community to make sure that the people that need to be in jail are in jail, and we have a jail bed for them.
But the understanding is, the judges want to know, based on the past agreement we have with the judges, is that they want to see who's in there and how much time's left, who's a risk and who isn't. Then we can decide from there who gets outboarded. We don't have that data available for them.
We're doing some of that,
We don't have a printout
Commissioner.
of that data, but we do have that information available. We don't have a printout, but we do have, Captain Hall can tell you every day how many women are in how many women are in the jail, how many men are in the jail, how many people are there for felonies, how many are there for misdemeanors. We may not be able to get it on a printout that's nice and concise and easy to work at, but we have the information available.
We've been compiling that daily for several months, some form,
For
but it's
several
manually
years.
done. We have to go through the
for several
records and
years
make a
we've been
list and
compiling it
add to
manually.
that, okay? So it may not be quite as detailed, but we've been doing that to find out who's there, how long they've been there, what are they there for, how many days they have left, these kind of things. But there's additional information that could come with in addition to that, with the push of a button, if we
If the
can
system-
get it out, yes.
At the touch of a keystroke, I should be able to tell my average length of stay, how many 18 to 20-year-olds I have in there, how many 25 to 30-year-olds. I can't do that. We have to look at every single one. When we met with New World, we said, all this data's in there. but I can't get it out. There are no programs, and there's nothing that allows me to get in and build the program.
Can we call the?
And they said, well, we have that. I'm sure we can get it for you. And the last we heard was, yeah, we can get it for you, but it's going to cost you 30-some thousand for this new program that will extract that information for you. We're going.
And that requirement was part of the specifications that were written when we bought the program from New World.
That's where
They marketed it to us that they could provide us this information, and it is not in fact happening.
We're looking at those specs and contract right now.
Well, we're going to call this motion very shortly.
Okay, I think we should do the 15 thing, because what you just said, that we can ride the crest of the wave a little bit with a 195 number, and if for some reason you had to have more, we could have an emergency meeting and do more. I think the 15 number will get us by for now. So I'm in favor of it.
Okay, we have a motion by Thomas, supported by Rennie, to move forward with boarding out of prisoners.
No, to do an analysis, to come back with how many beds they need and what budget they need. That's his,
That's
that
not- that's
that
not
is
his
his
motion.
motion.
That's
That is
not
his
his
motion.
motion.
That's not what I said.
Sarah, will you read the motion,
He wanted to
please?
move it forward to get a report back about how many beds and how
That's
much
not-
money
no,
we
that's
need.
what you said. That's not what he
That's
said.
not what his motion was.
Well,
Sarah,
what's
will
his
you read the
motion?
motion, please?
What I have in my notations was that Thomas said, move ahead and come back next week.
Yep, that's exactly what I heard, is he wanted staff and the sheriff to get together, come back with the number, what the anticipated number is, and the dollar amount they need and where it might come from, and report back. That was the motion on the floor.
The
But you made a
motion was
friendly
to move
amendment.
ahead.
No, I asked him for the dollar amount or the number of inmates, and he said, no, I didn't want to do that.
Let's
I
have-
just want him to
let's
come
have-
back and
Let's have
report.
Commissioner Thomas rephrase the motion as he made it, because my understanding of what he said and what your understanding is not the same, so. Commissioner Thomas, will you tell us what your recommendation was?
That we move forward and move it to the meeting for next week, our regular meeting, because it has to go there anyway.
So you-
And that in the meantime, they come up with the data that we're asking for, that's all.
Yeah.
And that was the
That's what I
same.
just said.
Huh?
That's what I just said.
That's what he seconded.
Yeah, but he made a friendly amendment. Does that matter?
No, I said,
No,
that's what I
because
thought
they didn't
he
do
said,
it.
is to move it,
Okay,
bring it forward to the
any
next
questions?
meeting with an analysis.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion?
That's your point.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried.
That's what he said.
I don't know if
I was
we're all
right.
as confused as I am,
We
but
didn't mean to get you all riled up like that,
That
but
was the motion.
we'll,
That was the
we'll sit
motion.
down
This horse to
and
death.
come back
that's
next
not
week.
warm.
Happy to come back
okay.
with maybe a little more definitive plan.
And
thank you for your support.
A more definitive plan,
Yes.
yes.
We
Yeah,
will give
thank
you
you,
our
yeah.
best guess.
I know you will.
That's
love
what- and
option
that's all we
4.
can do, because we can't
We gotta
predict what's
find the
going to
money
happen in
for that.
November.
Did you want to make that motion?
Not now.
I can do that.
Let's move later.
Let's move forward.
Thank you,
All
Sheriff.
right.
Thanks, Bob.
Is there
Thank you.
anything else
Thank
in the
you.
sheriff's office?
I hope not.
Me too.
If somebody will wake Jean up in the back, she's next. Thank you,
About
Bob.
ready to take a break and go home and get my camping gear.
Got an extra bed in the jail?
Ready to go.
No, I really don't.
Yeah, because there's no extra room in the jail.
It's wide open
I
now.
was just hoping that I can make it home in time for the beginning of the hockey season.
We could put you up in the work release building.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
At least you have air conditioning and TV. A lot of people don't have that.
You said,
Gene,
Bob?
you want money? You're next.
Gene, the only thing that I would ask, this is not a land bank request. This came from the Brownfield Authority, right?
This is a
Judge.
It's in our agenda as a land bank
Thanks, Judge.
request, and I just wanted to clarify for all those, the land bank didn't make this request. It comes from the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority,
All right.
even though it's titled land bank in here.
Within your packet, you have a memorandum from myself and from the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. We were awarded 2 loans totaling $1,397,424 for environmental cleanup relative to the TBA Credit Union brownfield environmental work located at 626 and 636 East Front Street. One of the loans, the $397,424, was approved out of the DEQ Revitalization Revolving Loan Fund, which requires the county's full faith and credit. The $1 million loan was approved out of the DEQ Brownfield Revolving Loan Fund, which does not require the county's full faith and credit. Both loans are interest-free for the first 5 years. The 5th year requires a payment on a 10-year amortization schedule at 1.5% interest. The repayment is made with the increased taxes realized by the TBA credit union parcels that they have made on that private investment that they make on that parcel. The Brownfield Authority, to protect the county's full faith and credit, requires that an irrevocable letter of credit be placed in the name of Grand Traverse County so we could draw on that letter of credit should there not be enough TIF to pay back that $397 loan. The Brownfield Authority looked at this request. They have approved similar loans and in your name, and you have requested the letter of credit to be put in your name. The Brownfield Authority is recommending that we approve this loan and requiring you full faith and credit, subject to securing a letter of credit for the full loan amount of $397,424.
Dan?
What I wonder is, they're going to get in there and clean up this environmental problem, and it's going to cost like $1.4 million. Okay, what happens if they get in there and, man, it's going to cost $5 million? I mean, what happens if that money doesn't cover the cost? Once they start digging and doing their stuff, it could be, I've done a lot of remodeling in my life, and I know a lot of times when you start getting into things, it's much worse than you thought. And,
in brownfield projects, that does happen.
What's that do to the county? Here we are on the hook for,
We're not on
The overage.
well, what happens if it fails? What happens if the project fails?
If the project fails, then we draw down on the letter of credit and pay back the state of Michigan for the $394. So the county
is there any
is
risk
never,
for us? That's the point there. What's the risk for the county in doing this?
the county is never on the hook for any of the work that's associated with that brownfield plan. The risk is on the developer that needs to make that investment. So if they're in the middle of the project and they find that there's substantially more environmental cost associated with that, they would have to upfront that cost instead of having the loan pay for the.
And let's say they say, we quit, then what happens to that property? Is there just a foundation
Put a
there?
hole in the ground.
It's their problem.
And that's their problem? Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you remind me of this full faith and credit part by Grand Traverse County for the 397? 397,000. Why are we giving a full faith and credit on this deal?
Most of the loans from DEQ previously required the county's full faith and credit. It's just a mechanism for DEQ to secure that they receive that payment back. And the Brownfield Authority, that for all of the loans we've had, always required the full faith and credit.
So we just keep that in a reserve account and you can send it back to them?
We put a letter of credit in our name in the bank, and if there's not enough TIF to pay back that loan, then we draw down on that letter of credit to pay back the state.
All right, okay. All right, okay.
Any further questions?
I'll move for approval.
Support. Second. Motion by Max Barr, supported by Thomas, to move forward with the DEQ full faith and credit of $397,424.
Okay, I got you.
Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gene.
It's tricky.
Okay, that brings us to the prosecuting attorney's resolution for fees for true copies. Christopher, you want to speak to this?
Yeah, thanks, Sonny. The county clerk, Bonnie Shelley, was contacted by the state court administrator's office about 3 weeks ago they had learned about this resolution passed in 1993 that authorized true copy fees. They informed the clerk that they thought that fee was unauthorized, that there weren't any statutes that allowed the collection of a dollar fee for true copies. Bonnie asked me to look into it. I looked into it. I could not find any statutes that authorized the collection of the $1 fee. I also reviewed the State Court Administrative Office's policies and procedures. Right in their policies and procedures, it's one of the items that's prohibited when we're talking about copying documents. So based on that, I'm recommending that the 93 the resolution be rescinded. And I did talk to Bonnie about, what is the total amount that's collected from these fees? And it's only about $150. And none of it's shared with the court. It is solely kept by her office. So it's not a whole heck of a lot of money, and there's nothing in the statutes that allow for the charging that fee.
Chris?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we rescind Resolution 328-93, establishing a $1 per document fee for true copies of circuit court documents.
They got the box.
I have a motion by Max Bauer, supported by Rainey. Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you, Chris. Now, would you like to speak to the Bureau of Indian Affairs
Yes.
decision?
Yes, I've provided all of you with the latest opinion on parcel number 82. That's the parcel that's approximately 159 acres. We did receive the decision of the superintendent to place the property in a trust. We would like to proceed as we proceeded with the other parcel, parcel 80, and file an appeal within the next, week and a half, 2 weeks. So I am seeking an authorization resolution.
I'll make that motion.
I second.
Okay, motion by Thomas, supported by Lathrop, to file an appeal to the Board of Indian Affairs decision to allow the Grand Traverse Band to annex parcel 82 into the trust status. Further discussion. Larry?
Yeah, if the records could reflect, if Chris is fine with this, that the appeal basically is an administrative review on behalf of the Bureau of Indian Affairs to go back and review the claim that the historical records or the historical records show that the tribe was federally recognized after the date that the carcerary decision was made, that tribes that were recognized after 1935 or before 1935 could put lands in trust, and ones that were not could not put lands in trust. And apparently the national roll for the Grand Traverse Band shows it being recognized in the 1980s, I think, something like that. So, I mean, that's the administrative question, and in essence, isn't that correct?
There actually may be more questions.
Oh, there is more questions, okay.
Dave Benda and I, we've been talking about another issue that we feel should be explored. I don't know ultimately if we're going to raise the other issue, but certainly the Charcari decision, that is the main issue, but I don't want to prevent us from raising other issues.
Okay, that's fair.
Basically, the motion is to allow staff to file an appeal with the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Finance.
I'm going to be brief. We have the June trial balance, and then on page 55, just a summary of revenues compared to the prior year, followed by the expenditures. And I've noted in the notes the significant variances with an explanation. I'm not seeing anything at this point that causes me concern. The one revenue that I did not comment on was our charges for services. We're actually seeing some nice increases in the courts and the Register of Deeds offices that should give us some revenue over and above what we had budgeted. On the expenditure side, the significant variances are explained. You'll see that in general government, we have personnel reductions in the clerk and prosecuting attorney's office, and also the treasurer's office, which is somewhat arbitrary because it's due to the elimination of the defined benefit retirement costs. But everything at this point can be explained, and our financial position actually will look better next month because we're starting to collect the tax revenue. And unless there's any questions, that's all I have for that.
Let me teach you something.
Well, no, there used to be bonds in this. I know there is.
Moving forward to the budget adjustments.
I have a few budget amendments here that I would ask for your approval on.
Motion approved.
Support.
Motion by Thomas, supported by Max Bauer to approve the budget adjustments as outlined by the finance director. I would note that per our earlier conversation, you note a $22,000 increase in expenditures for tethers. You want to talk
Yes.
about why community corrections is expanding and who isn't in our jail? $22,000 for the people who are on tethers.
Cool.
That wouldn't have been there.
Cool.
They'd have been in jail.
And that is covered within, the user fees, so that's
Right.
that's not an additional appropriation or
No, but
charge against
it is
the-
$22,000 worth of people who are not in our jail that are wearing tethers that they are paying for.
Yes.
So is that they're not in our jail. Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve the budget amendments as outlined by the finance director. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Administrator.
Yes, the strategic plan is coming to the board next week for final approval, and we had a couple departments that wanted to make a few changes. The IT department in your packet had submitted some changes. We'd also received an email from Jason Jones that's in your packet, and one from Georgia Durga, asking for some amendments to the strategic plan, to their strategic plans. And I just included those for your information. If you have any problems with those changes, please let me know. Otherwise, I will assume that you want to incorporate those changes. And MSU, since then, since the packet went out, I got one from MSU Extension, just basically changing some of their goals. They have goals in their strategic plan that they want to align with the board's goals differently, and so it's really not a substantive change. I'd like your permission to make those changes before the next board meeting, and give you the full packet with these changes included. If that isn't a
Any comments,
problem.
questions? The only one comment that I had, and Dick's got his out here, so I don't dig through page by page. One of the things that was added under strategic goal number 8,
Yep,
under C, was to continue to support the stormwater ordinance.
yep.
The townships the majority of the township, I believe, have opted out of the stormwater ordinance. So I'm not sure when the local governments who have jurisdiction over stormwater would opt out of that ordinance, why the county board would continue to support it. Dan?
No, 80%.
There are at least 4 municipalities that have signed an intergovernmental agreement and do want the county's support in having Bob and his staff. Pardon?
Enforce.
Enforce it. So there are some people out there, there are some poorer municipalities that do really want this service. And as this board has made it in the past board and this board, well, we're trying to work together with the townships to benefit the environment, benefit people. We're doing other junk ordinances and noise ordinances and fireworks ordinances. Why not a stormwater ordinance?
We're enforcing their ordinances, they're not county ordinances.
That's right. And that's exactly what these people in the 4 municipalities want. And so I think for us to just take that off the table, it's still an embryonic phase developing. Why not say that if townships want to do a stormwater ordinance and we can some way assist that, it doesn't hurt us any and doesn't cost us anything really, because I don't think Bob ever had to defend a stormwater ordinance issue yet. So you've got townships out there that do want this, just because the majority doesn't doesn't mean that some don't. It's just like the fireworks ordinance. It's just like other ordinances where Bob Cooney's office.
We didn't put the fireworks ordinance in our county strategic plan. And I'm not sure why we have this one in our.
Well, it's because we said that we want to protect the environment. And that includes water. Water should be where it's supposed to be. It shouldn't pollute people's basements, and nutritive water shouldn't get into people's ponds or lakes. It's an important thing. So if we support that we want to have a pristine environment, then I think we should support the possibility of stormwater ordinances if the townships so desire.
The 4 townships that I represent have all rejected the stormwater ordinance.
I know that,
Well-
but there's others that don't. They're embracing it.
Dave?
I apologize, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to limit the discussion tonight to these additions and changes. I didn't want to open up the whole plan for discussion. I think that's probably something we should do next week.
This was added at a later meeting. It wasn't in the original.
Along with a lot of other things that were added. So why are you picking on this one?
Well, I'll pick on the other,
I can pick on a couple of the other ones, but this one I had a real big problem with, so.
It's not a big problem.
I got another one. Why should we support and advocate a thriving arts community?
Stormwater is important.
That's not part of our job.
We should work with our townships.
Chris?
Well, I don't really want to get into this right now either. However, having visited with the Fife Lake Village Township Supervisor and the Fife Lake Village President, I guess you would call her, and a few other people, all they're asking for, the townships, is that if someone violates their ordinance, that the county prosecutor will step in and defend them. And quite honestly, and Bob Cooney did do a presentation to the MTA and explained what happened to some residents in Green Lake Township, and I really don't want to get into it right now. So, that having been said, perhaps we ought to have a discussion at a later date about some of the items in our strategic plan.
Okay. That's fair. That's fine.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Okay.
Because we have a member of the public that's been sitting here for 2.5 hours, and I hate to...
Chaz doesn't have anything else to do.
Thank you for the peek into the inner workings.
He probably won't do that again.
I will.
Not yet.
Oh, no, not yet.
Hang in there. We're getting there.
Okay, so we're going to have additional discussion on the strategic plan
Probably.
at
Yes.
our Board of Commissioners meeting next week. Will it be on our agenda for approval?
Yes. Unless you want to move it.
Let's move it.
Move it out?
Well, if we're going to have a
Another committee
discussion
meeting?
about some of these items...
I'm not prepared to approve it in its current form.
So just take it to Ways and Means next month, or RMA, whatever. Whatever your pleasure is.
Maybe to all three?
Huh?
I would suggest that we take strategic planning to the RMA meeting in August.
Either that, or we could start early
Done.
next Wednesday.
No.
It'll be very late next
I'm
Wednesday.
in next to that, okay.
Very
good.
Let's defer that to RMA.
We'll do it someday.
All right, moving on.
I got it. I got it ready.
You sure?
Yep.
Okay, so the next item would be the budget update.
Now I have to find my piece of paper. How much you want to hear? I can give you the short version, how about that?
That would be wonderful.
Well, of course, we have a
'cause
lot
I'm
of,
coming.
we've been having budget hearings with departments. We've met with several elected officials and department heads.
How many have asked for a reduced budget?
None.
I had to throw that in.
How many added more revenue and less expense? No, none.
Done.
Yeah. So, we've got a bunch of different things facing us right now, and it's really not anything we can settle, at least for another month. We know that tax revenue's coming in. It's increasing rather than decreasing, which is a great thing. We might be looking at, we're asking all departments to look at their user fees and to make sure they're set appropriately if we're way out of whack with other counties and so on and so forth, but not to put any shock value in those increases. If they're way out of whack, then increase them, over a time period rather than, a 20% increase this year. Make it a smaller number and do it over a 4-year period or whatever, so that it's not, for the users who are used to paying a certain fee, they're not screaming and yelling about it. We can do things more efficiently, and we're looking at ways to do that. We're talking to them about consolidating or collaborating or changing their processes to reduce costs. We're looking at shifting outside costs or costs to outside sources if we can. That is to grants or to specific beneficiaries of service. There's also a possibility of eliminating positions or programs to make everything balance out. Or we could reduce our employee costs, that is wages and benefits of our employees, or to at least keep them in line with inflation. Big issues right now, we just got one added to the list at the top, is the jail. Investments in technology and infrastructure funding and job classifications are 3 things that you mentioned that you want to do this year or you want to try and get done this year. Those are on the front of our minds as we go through these budgets. We have 2 big areas that are big question marks for us. Health insurance is one of them. We've been told 20% increases you can expect. For us, that's $850,000, which is ridiculous. However, we are getting some good signs from this year's health insurance numbers, and if they continue, that'll bode well for next year also, as well as this year, because we're self-insured for the first $10,000 under an HRA, a health reimbursement account for our employees, and those numbers are turning out better than they estimated at the beginning of the year or when they did the projections. So that's good. That's good news, and it might bring that 20% increase down. We also talked with Blue Cross and Priority Health and Cadillac Insurance, and I'll condense what I've heard is that the impacts of Affordable Care Act may be a little more pronounced on small businesses than they are on larger employers like us. We have very generous plans that didn't have a lot of limitations and restrictions on them that are going to be pulled off by the Affordable Care Act, so that will help us out when it comes to changing our plans. We are going to change our plans next year. Blue Cross is drastically reducing the number of plans they're offering, so we're going to get mapped to some new plan. And we don't know what that looks like, and we won't know for a while yet. But we are going to get mapped so that it's going to look like our plan, but not quite. And I don't think it's going to be a 5,000, 10,000 HRA. Due to the changes in the Affordable Care Act, we're looking at going self-insured fully next year to avoid the employer tax and to allow us to have a lot more flexibility in the way we design our plans. It just makes a lot of good sense for us at this time. But that we're also going to see a savings in financing. Having done this before, you're going to save some money by taking on the risk of fully insuring or self-insuring up to a certain level. And obviously, the higher you go with your self-insurance, the cheaper the stop-loss insurance gets. So there's a trade-off between what you have and what you do. Anyway, there's an analysis that needs to take place for that. So health insurance might come down. It might not be as bad as we think it's going to be. But right now we've got 20% baked in the budget. Retirement and retiree health care, we're reallocating costs so that if we have one person that's still in the DB plan in the unit, they don't get an $80,000 expense for their retirement cost. We're going to spread the cost between that person's normal cost of having a defined benefit plan, retirement plan, which will be maybe 9% of payroll or something like that. And then the legacy costs, which are all the retirees that retired from that unit, are also getting charged to that one person. We're going to spread that to all the other positions in the unit. Because even though those people are on DC plans now, all the people who were retired were on there, and it's a legacy cost to everybody.
Yes.
So we're going to respread that, and that's going to change the way those numbers look. And then the second thing is we're going to look, as we talked about earlier, at pension benefit obligation bonds We've got John Axe coming in at the Ways and Means Committee next month to talk to you about that. They've done some preliminary work with us, but we're waiting for information from MERS on their analysis of funding, either on a market based, well, I'm not going to go into the details of that, but the fact of the matter is that nobody's done it yet under this new law. Saginaw's waiting for an answer, and they keep getting, well, actually, it's a good thing. Treasury keeps on sending them back for more information, made them go out and verify their AA rating. They're doing things like that, but the intent of the law is to do it, to allow us to do this. And I don't think Treasury is going to be able to stop them, and their fiscal year starts October 1. So we should be seeing something happening there soon. And all we're doing, basically, the short version is we're going to lengthen the amortization of that debt. We owe $46 million. You saw it in our financial statement today. Our unfunded liability is $46 million for our pension and for the retiree health care for those folks who are eligible for retiree health care. And we're going to talk about stretching that out to 20 or 25 years, and it will basically allow us to play a flat number based on those same assumptions. It's just you're stretching out we did the same thing for the townships last year. We took, gave them money and took their bonds and let them pay that 10-year bond over a 20-year period so they could actually afford to pay it off. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to propose to do with the pension with your approval. And there's a substantial savings there, and it's really something that if we can pull it off, it'll be, I think it'll be a good thing for the county. So that's where we are with the budget, and we obviously, until we know the health insurance numbers, and until we know a little bit more about the whole pension obligation bond thing, we can't button it up. And then we still have to talk about next month. We're going to have to start going into closed session and start talking about labor negotiations and what we're going to plan to do next year. So that's where we are, and I just wanted to give you a brief update on that.
Next item is the iPad policy.
I have one change. I'd like to start with that, and that is to change iPad to tablet computer. Everywhere it says iPad in here, change it to tablet computer so it can...
Be a tablet computer.
Yeah, it can be applicable to more than just an
Kind of
iPad.
like Kleenex.
Not to.
Yeah.
You don't want to call it Kleenex, you want to call it a tissue, facial
Right,
tissue.
exactly.
Got it.
If that's okay with you folks, and this is just here for
Did
your...
anybody have any questions? The draft was in your packet. I think it was all pretty straightforward. I don't think anyone should have any questions. So do we want to motion tonight to approve this, or do we want to bring a final draft to us next week with tablet computer in it, Dave?
I can bring you a final draft next week. If you want to approve it tonight to be finally
Well,
approved.
it'll be ratified next week one way or the other, whether you approve it tonight and then we just
Bring it next
acknowledge
week.
the change, or you
Put it
just
in
bring it
next
to us
week's
next week
packet.
and we're done.
I guess the only comment, I see where damaged or lost or stolen.
Yeah, what's that all
That
about?
we want it, should we decide whether we want stolen in there or not? Because,
Gosh, I don't know.
Was that added in, Dave, or?
That was Chris Kramer's.
well, whatever.
Yeah, I
Chris
wasn't,
Kramer wanted to make sure she threw that in there.
yeah, the statement as it was if the iPad is damaged or lost, and then someone's added or stolen,
It's lost, I guess.
Well, if it's stolen, chances are you've been broken into and you're going to have insurance coverage anyway.
Necessarily. yeah.
My insurance doesn't cover any machines built in the 21st century.
Alrighty.
That doesn't surprise me.
Charlie?
Is it normal for our board members or other employees to have to pay for this stuff if it's lost? Is that just something you've done? And when did that come in? What's that all about?
Being in there.
Do we have insurance on these kind of
Is that
equipment
on-
internally, or?
Is that in
don't.
there?
Oh, that's so
It's
at that level.
yeah,
We need to
we've
get rid of
talked
that.
about insurance, and it just costs too much for the number of devices that we have out there. It just doesn't make sense.
So how do you enforce
And for
that?
the amount that we spend on replacing lost or stolen or broken.
So how would you enforce that? I mean, how do you pay for that? What?
Well, when you go to turn in a computer.
Something to think about
tablet.
for next week.
They
I
take it
think,
out of
you
your
know,
pay, or what do you do?
We'll talk about it next week.
Okay. I don't like the statement at all, to be honest with you.
Well, you know, and
Let
that's,
us know.
well, we can have the
Thank you.
discussion next week, or we can talk about it right now and have a final draft that we can approve. Personally, I'd like to strike that whole last sentence
That's fine.
that says board members will further be responsible for full replacement cost if it's damaged or lost or stolen. I'd like to strike that whole thing, you know.
Sure.
It's county property, you know,
yeah, we already have a proper use.
yeah, it already
Documents,
tells you what you
it
can use it
refers to
for and
those.
all of that. I don't think that last sentence even needs to
That'd
be there.
fine.
So we'll have them bring it back for a final?
Yeah, he'll bring it back next week. He'll make the appropriate changes, and at least from my perspective, I'd like to strike that last sentence.
Me too.
You want to vote on that, or what
I'll
do we
do that.
do?
No, we don't have
We
to.
need to.
Yeah.
Well, next week.
Okay?
Are we going to take it out, though? Is that the idea?
That was my suggestion.
Okay.
I'll bring it back with those revisions.
Okay, brings us to the
And that doesn't
unfinished
mean you can
business,
throw
the
yours.
purchasing
It's the
policy and bid specs. Commissioner Inman asked to have this put on the agenda.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Given the discussion that we had regarding the Sheriff's Department request to go out for bids for the recent maintenance and working on cars, and then the whole question of exactly what our policy does say, I hadn't had a chance to review it or read it in a long time, and I thought it would be valuable if we just got it out, dusted it off, put it in the packet, let you review it and read it. And I guess the only question I have is a clarification of when it's, I see when bids are required to come in, you know, they have verbal, written, and then whatever, but is there, is it specify, I'm trying to see it in here, when it has to be a sealed bid? Under what, under arrangements do they require a sealed bid? Now, the only, and then I'm gonna go forward from there and say, you know, now that we're all in this technology age, does it make, is there a way that somebody can submit a bid other than typing it up, put it in an envelope, and hand delivering it to the county? I don't know if there's a way that they can send it via an attachment, and the attachment's not open till the date of the bid, the time, or is there another method that would be more accommodating to the vendors to submit bids?
Let's ask staff to look into that.
Yeah, and I just wanted to bring up
There
those
is.
questions, so I don't know, I
There's an
don't know the
electronic way to
answers.
do this.
All right.
And there's
We
no
can do it
electronic
through
way
a
to do it,
service.
you can't do it.
Yeah, we can do it through a service.
Let
What
us
they do
know.
is they go out to a website,
Right.
and they submit it.
You have to do it through a service.
Oh,
It's done-
okay,
It's done through a
interesting.
service.
You can't do it.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
direct.
So the only thing I was gonna bring up is if we wanna
We'll
talk
look
about
into it.
this later, or bring some stuff, we can maybe say, okay, we can amend this policy to reflect that they can, we'll go out and find a vendor to help us with this, is that what we do?
Yeah, I'll look into it.
All right, and then he can report back.
It's interesting that the policy is old enough that it talks about faxed bids will not be received. Well,
Yeah.
at least from my perspective, fax
And I wasn't aware of that.
almost a thing of the past.
And, you know, and
They're
Sonny-
getting really close.
And I wasn't even aware of that fact when we got in the initial discussion with the sheriff's department. So that's why I asked just to, put it in the packet.
Okay. So you're gonna talk about that a little, or look at the electronic options and.
Yeah.
And then clean up, and then maybe come back with a recommended new policy.
Possibly updated policy.
Yeah.
Okay.
This will be part of my commissioner.
All right,
Wow,
commissioner
you're not gonna read
committee
all this, are you?
reports.
Read some of it. I know it's been long.
I've
Oh,
seen
you
this.
forgot something.
New business.
I've looked at
Oh, I'm
it.
sorry.
Public
Second
comment.
public comment. Sorry, Chaz, I wasn't gonna leave you sit here all night and then I'd talk to you anyway.
Here's your copy. And then I have something. Here's your copy. Have a copy, Chris.
Thank you.
We don't need. Lifeguard equipment, Steve.
Oh, and the
Thank you very much for
clerk
your
would
time.
want one.
My name is Chaz McCall. I reside at 6900 North Long Lake Road, which really translates to Twin Lakes. In 1985, I purchased about 35% of the lake frontage land around Twin Lakes, and I've been there 28 years.
I have some very serious concerns about the activities transpiring there. I've had great interest in hearing about your concern for safety, for community being a priority, because most of these activities are, in fact, not safe. I put you together a small packet, not a 255-pager, but just a 3-pager. And my first concern is that we have extensive hunting and gun shooting on the northwest side of the property at Twin Lakes Camp. On the 3rd page, I have colored some of those areas in. You'll see the highlighted yellow is where most of the hunting goes on. The pink component is where they enter your property from Suburban Estates Trailer Park. They drive down, they enter it in vehicles, okay? There are 2 or 3 parking spots up on top, and they also drive down and park on the north area. The orange area is a new home with a family moving in the middle of August. So it's 30 feet away from your county property there, all right? I'm concerned not only for those folks, but for the people on the northeast side, the people on the north side. I live on the south side. I have some slight concerns there also. If they just use shotguns, that would be one thing, but in my discussions with the caretaker at the camp, he's in agreement that they're using multi-caliber firearms. So that is a truly serious concern of mine. Last year, the last week in June, we had a doe shot and killed the last week of June on the soccer field at Twin Lakes Camp. I heard the shot at 2 a.m. I got up the next morning. I go to camp every morning. I'm there 2 or 3 times a day, but I went to talk to Jim, and he says, Chaz, I got to show you this. And there on the soccer field, not 100 feet from the dormitory, is a doe that somebody had popped at 2 a.m. in the morning and just left there. We've got some bad, unhealthy, evil activities going on out there. My second area of concern is the continued abuse of alcohol. It's flagrant, it's abusive, and it is escalating. It's the worst that it's ever been there. Most of it is underage youngsters. Now, when you all opened that North Beach, when you developed that partnership with Suburban Estates Trailer Park, the north part is the beach that they claimed, and that's where most of the alcohol and substance abuse took place at that time. They've gotten very aggressive in that you now have 4 swimming beaches. I don't know if you all know that, but they've created the other ones. There are 4 spots where they come down and swim. I call that the North Shore because I have a son in Hawaii, so I look at that North Shore, and that's the one that Suburban Estates and the county established that partnership. And when that happened, it changed the culture there, okay? It's become very, it's lewd. I try not to even go down in that area, okay? It's an extremely obscene area, and I take a lot of kids and older people out there fishing. Well, there's the second beach, and it holds about 2 or 3 people. And I call that Lover's Lane, because the folks that don't want to go there and act a fool with those kids, Lover's Lane is normally visited by people slightly older, and they don't care to socialize over on your main beach, so they have found a secluded area in there where they come in and spend their time. Then you have your primary beach, and I must say that in my 28 years, nobody has, there's been no drowning at Twin Lakes Park from anybody that's come to utilize your beach, okay? Only the people that tried to utilize the North Shore swimming pattern that was established by the kids from the trailer park, where they would swim over to the beach to see the girls and boys from the high schools that were coming up and using the camp, and then swim back. So, and then you have the, what I call Stepping Stone Falls, which is where your boat launch is, and that is now taken over not only as the boat launch, but that's a swimming area also. I left you some pictures, and the pictures show people using canoes, kayaks, and so forth in an extremely unsafe manner. No personal flotation devices, many of them. Too many people in the vessels. and using it in an unsafe manner. I call them the cowboys, all right? They're standing up and roaming around, and no matter how good a swimmer you are, if you get tipped over and hit your head on the edge of that boat, there's a potential danger there. One of my other major concerns, I don't know if we have any fishermen in this group, but I'm an ardent fisherman. And it's it used to be a fantastic fishery. But we have a lot of people that are coming out there, they don't have fishing license. I talk to them, I go, how you doing, how's the catch today? You fish a lot? Yeah. Do you have a salmon license? Oh, I don't have a license, man, okay? They give that information up easily. They're catching fish out of season, particularly bass, particularly early, because the northwest section of any lake gets the most in the direct sunlight. It warms up, that's where you have your fish population come in first. That's right where your North Shore Park is, okay? And they're abusing our resource badly. They're keeping undersized bass, they're exceeding the daily quota. And these issues that I've discussed with you could be very easily addressed with a little partnership with Suburban Estates Trailer Park and Communication, the Department of Natural Resources, the sheriff, because we have extended hours there, okay? They woke me up last week at 1 o'clock in the morning one day, a big beer party, and I went over the next morning to see Jim, and he says, hey, Chaz, let me tell you. I said, Jim, you don't need to tell me a thing. I said, you had a big beer bash last night, didn't you? He says, yeah. Every night since then, Jim's had to go out and collect beer bottles, okay? Most of this takes place between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. Not all of it. They become pretty flagrant now where they just come out and mosey into the park and drink. The reason they do that is because they have never been challenged.
I have photos.
And I believe that if people can abuse you or your properties and we don't do anything about it, then they'll abuse it more the next time around. We teach people how to treat us. All I want you guys to do is enforce the policies that you have there. All right, it's no hunting. That's been established for years. I've been to your Director of Parks and Recreation on multiple times to discuss most of these issues. There's been no resolution. We've discussed the fishing, and you know, you can partner with the DNR and have them come in because there are certain seasons when the abuses are flagrant, more flagrant, and that's when the fish are in the shallows and it's easy pickings, okay? And when the fishing gets difficult, most of the cowboys leave, all right, because then you have to really fish hard. So you have the DNR out there May, early June, even into late June, when the resources are most vulnerable. I think that we can do things to close these issues off with very limited expense. We do need to put a couple posts into the 2-track that they're coming in off Suburban Estates Trailer Park and going down in, okay? I have concerns truly about a young kid and alcohol and late night endeavors and drownings, okay? I'm concerned about other social components going on there at camp. I was an educator for 32 years. I know how kids behave. I'm concerned about maybe social problems over there on the beach, a young lady having some difficulty because there's been too much alcohol consumed. So if I could get you guys to give me some assistance in protecting that. It's a special spot, okay? I offered to leave that to Grand Traverse County. I told Sonny and I told Herb Lemkool 15 years ago that when I died, I wanted to leave that property to Grand Traverse County so that everybody could enjoy what I've had there all these years. Well, that's changed, okay? The stewardship has not been good, it's not been healthy, and it's not been honorable. I think about the people that donated that land and left it there. We're not honoring them. We're not honoring what we have there, ladies and gentlemen. We really aren't. And I'm asking for your help. I'm asking for your help to protect it, to love it, and to celebrate it. It's a unique area. If you ever want to come out and learn more about it, that's been my mistress for 28 years. I love that area. I'll show you around it. I know where the bones are buried, okay? I can show you what's going on and what we need to do. And I want to do that in a passionate, humble manner. But I love what we have there. We're not honoring it. and I'm asking for your help.
Chaz, will you touch upon something that you said, please, at the Parks and Rec Commission meeting? And please understand that Chaz has tried to work through the director and felt that he had to come to the Parks Commission, and now he's coming to the county board. You told a story about open sex at that park. Would you, it's
Yes,
not
I watched
pleasant,
a young
but
lady.
commissioners need to understand
I watched a young
what's
lady
going
have
on.
sex with 2 boys on your beach, and I came and told your prior director of Parks and Recreation, and he looked at me and laughed, and he said, that, well, you should hear what Commissioner so-and-so told me he did out here when he was a boy. I find that as minimalization, and I wasn't impressed with that.
Have you contacted our current park director? Did he return your
Malta,
calls?
I've contacted your current park director several times regarding these issues.
Does he return your calls?
There hasn't been anything done. Yes, sir.
Did you talk to the sheriff at all about this after-hours situation?
I've talked to Jim, who's the caretaker there, trying to let the county handle their business, but I've been informed and directed to call the sheriff. I had to call the sheriff the other day out there, and I will continue to do that. But I would think that if we would take a proactive approach to that instead of reactive, if we would ask the sheriff to send somebody through 2 or 3 times a night in the main season, okay, in the seasons where the social issues are about to erupt, that we would calm that down, because every youngster that were to get an MIP ticket, a minor in possession ticket, it's about $1,000 ticket, okay? Kids learn quickly, all right? All of a sudden, after several people get ticketed or charged or whatever, they go, hey, Twin Lakes isn't the place, man. This is not the place to go have the party anymore. And our worst season is coming up. I've got a pontoon boat, and I'm out around there all the time, and the kids will come down after practice at school and jump in that good, cold, clean water, and I hear them setting the time and the agenda and what they're bringing to drink that night, okay? And that's our worst time coming up, from now to the middle of September. These are young kids.
This is going to be part of my report tonight.
We are, we were all 16 to 19, 20 years of age at one time, and we were all just like them. We were bulletproof, okay? Well, the fact is that, and you look at what's happened out on the lake recently, we're not all bulletproof. And we have to love and honor our kids, okay? And we need to set some boundaries, healthy boundaries for them. And I believe, I was a coach for a long time. I believe in the philosophy that discipline creates performance. And there hasn't been any discipline at Twin Lakes Park. We have not, we really haven't done a good job there. And I'm asking for help there, for the kids, for the families that live around there that are certainly viable, for ammunition with the hunting, and some common courtesy to the people that live there also.
I have some suggestions.
If we
Ready to
can
go.
wrap it up, Chaz, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I did contact Sonny last year. I told him that I was having problems. He said he would contact Jason, and I'm sure that he did, but it's the worst it's ever been. So thank you. My information is at the bottom of those slips. If any of you ever want to contact me, I'd love to have you do that, and I'd love to show you the area out there. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Chaz.
All right. Any other public comment at this time? Seeing none, we'll move to commissioner reports.
That would be me.
Okay.
I understand everybody's been sitting here for a lengthy amount of time, but this is important. The Parks and Rec Commission has voted to put lifeguards at Twin Lakes. And I have to tell you that I am strongly opposed for a number of reasons, and I'm going to touch upon some of them. First of all, I understand the Parks Commission's response. I mean, it's an emotional response. You want to stop drownings out there. This isn't the way to do it. I can explain why. I will try to do this briefly. First of all, one needs to understand what is required of lifeguards out at that beach. The first item that you have in the packet that I handed out is, and I'm taking a lifeguard class. Please understand, I got up at 4:30 this morning. I was in the water at 5:30. I've been in lifeguard class most of the day. I've spent 3.5 hours in the water today. I am learning more, and I'm waterlogged. I have an ear infection. No one cares. Anyway. Okay. Rescue equipment. A rescue flotation device, easy thing. Masks and snorkels. They have to be instantly available. Binoculars, because you're going to have to be able to see. Marker buoys, readily accessible for submerged victim search and rescue. Swim fins. No one is going to be able to jump in that water and swim out in the middle of the lake and rescue someone without fins. First aid kits to treat minor and major medical emergencies at the beach area. Now, please keep in mind, folks, as you look at the first two pictures, the first picture that you have is the main beach, and the second picture you have is the North Beach, which is also recognized by Grand Traverse County as a swim beach. It has that little sign that you see right here, Dave, right here. That is posted by the county that says swim at your own risk. So it is recognized as a beach. As Mr. McCall pointed out, there are additional beaches that have been created along the shore. So the question is, how many of those beaches are you going to put lifeguards at? And what standard are you going to use? Red Cross's standard for a lifeguard is a 10-20 response. In other words, you must have to be able to scan your area that you are watching in 10 seconds and be able to reach your victim in 20.
Ain't gonna happen.
So the questions are, how many beaches are we going to guard, and what standards are we going to use? This is not a simple task. The other thing that we're going to have to look at as we move forward with this is putting up storage units at the beaches for equipment, because it has to be, as the Red Cross instructor said today, instantly available, and it does. Now, you go past the first two photos that I have, and you've got International Life-Saving Federation's Inland Open Waters Lifeguard Standards. These are world-recognized standards. The assessment criteria, I can tell you, to swim 50 meters in less than 50 seconds with your head above the water is not easy. I will not get into all of that right now. The next thing in your packet is one of the rear entrances into Twin Lakes, and it's one of the entrances that Mr. McCall just referred to. It is how vehicles are entering the back of our park onto our walking trails. Now, the next photo that you have is a fresh track. I was there Monday. It was a fresh track, and there were many of them. Vehicles are going in the evening and parking along the lake, Lover's Lane, what have you. The next picture, or three photos, is of a fire pit. Now, please note, the last picture of the fire pit is a broad picture which shows that it has been built under a dead tree. That's not necessarily where you want to put a fire pit. And you will note the lovely shot of the beer bottle. Mr. McCall told me that he had to drag a mattress out from the back of our property. He has been complaining about this forever, and I want something done. We have a dock. I didn't know that we have a dock, but we do. I was told that we had removed our docks because MMRMA told us we had to remove our docks. But oh no, the first photo, is, as you see, are the steps leading down to our dock. The next photo is of the dock that is still in the lake, and Jim, God love him, went out there. This, by the way, I want to say our caretaker, Jim, is a safety-conscious guy. This guy goes out there, he'll blow sand off sidewalks to keep people from slipping. He went out when he saw people using this dock when they were not supposed to and spray painted, keep off, no diving, et cetera, et cetera. I was told there are no docks out there. That is incorrect. The next photo you have, which doesn't show it very well, but I will be more than happy to email these photos to any one of you who would like to see them because they're really they show well in color, is of a rope that is dangling off of a tree over the lake. And around this, if you look closely, you will see logs in the water. Mr. McCall showed me on Monday where people go in and they are cutting our trees down. And the young people are using logs to float out into the middle of the lake. People that cannot swim are using this. Mr. McCall had to rescue a young person who said, "Help, I cannot swim," who was floating on a log. The next photo, I blanked out the faces so that you could not see, but I have gone out there numerous times. People openly drink, as my photo will show, and as Mr. McCall's photo showed. It is not a secret. This is a recipe, folks, for further disaster. As far as the hunting goes, the last picture is of where you'll see my husband's feet in it. But to the right of the storage building, people drive in to the park, and they have created on our lawn, on the soccer field, a 2-track where they hide their vehicles from being easily seen by the sheriff's department. So if somebody does come in and take a circle around, they're not being seen. Now, are there answers to this? Yes, there are. First of all, and this is just my opinion, we need to put up a gate that you cannot get through without it being open. And right now, there's when we have groups, or it's the only time that the entrance is closed, we have this yellow sawhorse, which everybody drives around. The back end of the property also needs to be fenced and secured. This is, your number one victim, I guess you would call it, of drowning is a male 15 to 19 years of age. And we've had 3 in the last 4 years. This can be fixed. We have to change the demographics that use that park. We have to turn that park from a party park, which is what it is now. It is a party park. And we have in our deed, a deed restriction that says we cannot allow alcohol on that property. And we do it every day. It has to stop. We need to change that park. I feel passionate about this. We need to change that park from a party park into a family park. We need family hours set. We need regular patrol, as Mr. McCall said, especially after the school season starts. Do I believe that lifeguards are going to make a difference out there? No, I do not. Let me tell you why. First of all, your visibility out in that lake, and I've been in it a number of times, and I'm sure our chairman, Commissioner Wheelock, has been as well. Visibility in that lake is only approximately 10 to 12 feet. Most people cannot dive in one dive, or even 2 in one breath, 10 or 12 feet, and reach anyone. It can't be done. So first of all, well, actually, I know one person who can do it, Chris Moore. He's a free diver. But anyway, that's another story. He's a rare individual. But it is extremely, extremely difficult. It is rare. And the first thing a lifeguard is going to face is where to go. The second thing they're going to face is whether or not they've got the capacity to dive down for a submerged victim. I cannot tell you, unless someone is truly an open water swimmer, and you can say you swim in open water unless you really are one, and you can do it for a great length of time. In cold water, you don't understand. I cannot caution this board, and I wish I had had more of this information in front of me, and for the Parks Commission, although I don't think I would have changed their minds. If you're going to take a look at how to fix what is happening out there, I think the safety precautions that Mr. McCall and some of the suggestions I've made need to be seriously looked at first. I do not think that we should react emotionally. I think we need to react with knowledge and very carefully, because if we simply put out lifeguards without the proper knowledge and education and know that they have the skills to do the job, we are not only risking Grand Traverse County residents by giving them a false sense of security. Oh, there's a lifeguard there, I can go do this. We are putting county taxpayers at risk as well. The other thing, I know I have one more important point, but honestly, it's escaping me at the moment. But
it was that the lifeguard can only patrol just that one little rope spot.
Thank you, Dr. Lathrop. The city has a lifeguard at Clinch Park, and I was told that the city lifeguards are only permitted to monitor their swim area. And if a swimmer is in their swim area and goes underneath the buoys, outside that swim area, they have to come back, they have to come out of the swim area, and they have to walk on the beach in order to swim outside that designated swim area. The reason for that is liability. Those lifeguards only monitor their designated swim area. Our designated swim area out at Twin Lakes is extraordinarily small. I mean, it is tiny. I would invite you all to go out and see.
It's a whole lake.
No, it's not.
Not because they
No,
put
it's
buoys
not.
up. They've got improved.
They've got buoys out there, and it's a very, very small thing. So what do you think a lifeguard is going to do when they are told only monitor this small swim area and they see someone out in the middle of the lake who they could not stop? Do you suppose they're going to stand there and watch? No. They are in all likelihood going to put themselves at risk. And it's serious risk. That lake is not a safe lake for swimming. I understand the Parks Director has said that. He is wrong. He is so wrong, I cannot even begin to tell you how wrong he is. That lake is cold. You can step one step, you can sink 2 feet. It is not a safe swimming lake. And to misrepresent that lake as safe, in my opinion, is irresponsible. That does not mean we should put lifeguards out there. I think that's a huge mistake. I think we need to take the precautions that we can initially. I think we need to move ahead judiciously. Thank you for listening.
Any other commissioner committee reports? I would mention that I attended yesterday the employee recognition proceedings yesterday morning, and Joanna Tuck was awarded the quarterly award for doing it right and providing exceptional service to the community. So, and she was recognized because of her coordination of the county relay and the National Cherry Festival parade. And she gets 4 hours of paid time off.
All right.
A certificate.
She's fabulous.
Hooray.
She does a fantastic job.
She did a great job.
Great.
Absolutely. All right, is there any other comments or questions from commissioners? Seeing none, any notices and announcements? Just as a point, and I'll try to remember to do it next week, I will not be available on the 21st of August for the Ways and Means
That's
meeting.
my birthday.
So, well, then, Mr.
I'll be 60.
Commissioner Rennie will be the master of ceremonies
No
for your birthday
kidding.
I'll be
party.
60 on that day.
The
The appropriate
21st,
responses, but you don't look.
anyway.
Make sure.
Any need for a closed session?
He's having a hard time.
I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
So moved.
All gone. Thank you, everyone.